I was just listening to what was it, Cabral? In the car, I was listening to a podcast, and he was on it, and it was pretty funny. He was talking about how a long time ago they were teaching the dog like a go meet people type command, and basically the idea was the dog goes and basically nudges somebody's hand with its nose, and then that person gives them a treat. All good in theory, and it was working amazingly until it didn't. And it was when the dog went to go meet somebody and the person didn't have the treat, and then the dog's like, oh wait, you don't have a treat, who are you, I don't know you, and then it bit the person. It's like, whoops, like that wasn't what we were planning. Dogs don't always want to just meet people. What is up?
So I've only got a couple minutes. Today's like my second fully booked day as a dog trainer. And,
fun.
So I'm teleporting between clients.
Yeah, just don't burn yourself out, because it's gotten to the point with me where I was booked up months in advance, like 10-hour days, 7 days a week, and eventually I'm like, I am either going to need to go on a 10-day vacation and then bring my schedule back a little bit, or I'm going to fail my business from burnout. So watch out for that.
I did that with massage, so I'm a little bit prepared for it with this.
Cool.
But on the go say hi command, especially like when you're dealing with service dogs, I use it like a send away, and I've started being a little bit more cautious with it, because Cerberus, like the way I've done it with Cerberus is like he'll go over, touch him, and then come back to me for the reward.
Mm-hmm.
And especially because, like they said, like with service dogs, you have people that are invading your dog's space all the time.
Yep.
And so what I want to train my dogs is that if somebody's in your space, you don't have to like it, move away.
Yeah.
But Cerberus is really bad about, like, he'll run up and he'll like booty bump them really bad, which sucks when you have an 85-pound dog whose butt is right at your knees.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but yeah, like even like the 8-month-old pitty puppy that I'm working with right now, her go say hi is beautiful. She walks over, brushes against the person, then immediately comes back. And I just tell the person, I'm like, oh, looks like she doesn't want to interact right now, but really that's what her trained response is.
Yeah. No, I get it. My big thing about it though is like, most dogs, not every dog, I can't say every dog, but most dogs don't even want to approach that person. They just know that in order to get that reward, that's what you want them to do, right? And so that can also, eventually lead to a pretty bad situation happening. That's a big reason why I'm against it, doing that. I can understand where it can be effective, and depending on the dog's behavior that you're working with, the one in front of you, it may be perfectly fine. That's why I'm not going to speak for all the dogs. But I mean, there is, that opportunity, because there was this big craze years ago where everybody was trying to do that, go meet people type commands, right? And it's just like, that is just a situation that is not good for the average dog.
No, and I 100% agree with that. Like I said, the only reason I train that is because that's specifically an encounter that they're going to have to encounter while they're out and about. When I'm working with my pet dogs and stuff, like I work with training the humans to recognize, is your dog even comfortable around other people? Is that, are they giving them kisses, or is that appeasement licks? Because the dog is like, I don't know you, don't eat me.
Yeah.
So understanding the dog in front of you and understanding, I almost forget which house it is. I think it's the next one. Understanding what your dog is trying to communicate is one of the most important things you can do as a dog owner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I saw a comment saying, like, what about a dog that loves people? That was from Sav. And I would completely say if that's the case, if your dog is the type of dog that loves people, I would absolutely refuse to teach it a command to go meet people. And the reason why is because when you're out working with your dog or walking your dog or anything, now your dog is not going to be focused on you. They're going to be focused on where's the next person I can run up to, right? Where's the next person that's going to reward me for this behavior? And I wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't want to that's just going to make training so much harder for you.
Yeah. One of my big things that I really want to change in the general public's mind is if your dog is not going to have to be reasonably expected to perform this on a semi-regular basis, or at least in an emergency situation, they don't need to practice it through their daily life.
Absolutely.
So
my dogs are less trained than most people's pet dogs, and the reason why is my expectations are very different. Like my dogs are very highly trained with certain commands, like their recall, like their stays in place, their leave it and their off, and their break commands. Very highly trained in that. Other shit, nah. I could care less. I could care less about almost everything. I don't need my dog walking between my legs. I don't need my dog to be at a perfect hill right next to me with their head straight up engaging me the entire time. I don't need that, right? Because I'm not doing that regularly with my dogs. That's not the life they live, and that's completely acceptable and appropriate for my life. If somebody wants their dogs to be different, absolutely. Train your dog for your lifestyle and what you're going to be regularly doing, but I can agree with you on like if you're not going to do it regularly, don't even worry about teaching the dog. But I also disagree on certain aspects, right? Because when it comes down to mental stimulation, training is an amazing form of mental stimulation. So further you can do it, the better. And then on top of that, when it comes to maybe a dog, high drive, low drive, doesn't matter. The potential of having reactivity when in high stress situations is going to decrease astronomically the more they learn obedience, the more they understand engagement, the more they're looking at you for direction. So I mean, it goes two ways, you know?
yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And that's where I'm, you want to set your dog up for success no matter what the situation is. I'm out of tripe treats. Thank God. Don't let your dogs pick their own treats out. It's disgusting. They always pick the nasty, stinky stuff. Do because they enjoy it.
I always pick the most stinky stuff out there, man. Like, I have to. I use kibble for the most part for training, and then when I want really high level, like jackpot rewards, that's when the smelly stuff comes out.
Yeah, I don't know. It was Andy's birthday. I wanted to spoil her. So I let her pick out all the treats for my treat bag, and I usually only let her pick out her high value stuff. And now my treat bag is currently tripe and lung and fish and these gross squid smelling things, and then my hands stink and I don't like it. But anyway, yeah. I am at my client's house. I will catch you guys in probably about an hour and a half.
Absolutely. This is going to be a long live, so that way I can edit and cut out the really high level content and then and put it on a podcast. But yeah, you have fun with your live with your training, your live training in person. Let's see, Lone Wolf. I say that you want to come up. I'm not. I don't know if I know you yet. But I'll bring you up anyway.
Hello?
Hi, Lone Wolf. How are you?
Hey, no, I scrolled across this live. You're a canine trainer?
I am.
Right, I'm 22. I heard you say that you're going to put this on a podcast, so I'm not going to say my name or where I'm from, if that's cool with you.
Oh, no, absolutely. I try to keep everybody's anonymity completely outside of the public spectrum. So you don't have,
Right.
I don't want to know that information unless you want to disclose
I'm
it.
going to tell you the scenario pretty much.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask your perspective on it. So me and this girl have been talking for about 2-3 weeks, hanging out, fooling around, yada, yada, yada. Anyways, I live with my uncle. And my uncle just got a dog about a week ago. It's a 6-month-old American Bully with this thing called an XL gene.
Yep.
Um, and so he keeps the dog inside of a kennel, and he wasn't there yesterday. This is yesterday. And I've been taking out the dog to use the restroom. I live there, but
Hmm.
I'm like never over there. Like I'm not even over there right now. Um, I'm at my mom's right now. And yesterday, the girl was over, and we just got to the crib, and I took the dog out to use the restroom, and the dog had pissed, but he didn't number two,
Hmm.
and we went inside, and I knew my uncle just took him out because my uncle just left, and my uncle's not gonna not take him out. So I brought him inside. She said, "Oh, you should let him out for a little bit, like like let him play and stuff." And I was like, "All right." And so we're chilling, and then he just drops a big deuce on the kitchen floor, and I get up, and I'm yelling at him, I spank him and whatnot, and I take him outside, and I'm telling him, no, I put his face inside of it, I spank him, I take him outside to show him where to use the restroom, I bring him back inside, put him away, and then hold on, okay, yeah, I put him away, and she was telling me, she was like, I don't think that was the best way to handle that, and we had
It
to talk
wasn't.
about it. We had to talk about it, and like I said, this dog is not mine, but at the same time, though, I'm not experienced on how to train dogs. I only see
Yeah,
my
yeah,
parents
yeah. So
train dogs when I
I'll
was
help you.
younger, and this is
I'll
how
help
they
you out
train
with
them.
the. Yeah, I'll help you out with the
She
why
said
that
it was
was not
wrong
the
to
great.
spank him
Yeah.
and yell at him.
So yeah, that punishing for using the bathroom inside is the worst thing you can do, and the reason why is because the dog's not going to associate going inside with the punishment. They're going to associate doing it where you saw them do it is wrong, right? So it's not going to help them go outside. It's just going to help them hide it better from you, right? What we want to do is if they go inside, just bring them right back outside, right? And then clean up the mess inside. Now, if they go outside, that's when we turn it into a
Whoa, whoa,
party.
whoa, whoa, hold
Yes,
on.
yes,
You
good
said
boy.
you
Give
said
them treats.
you said when they're taking a crap, pick him up and bring him outside really quickly.
Yeah, yeah. Move them outside, like so that way they know. Okay, outside is where we go, right? That's what we want to associate. We don't want them to associate going in front of us as bad because what
What
might
about
happen.
yelling at him? What about
No,
yelling at him?
don't even do that. Don't even do that. Here, think about it this way, right? The dog uses the bathroom. They're not sure yet where they should be going, right? It hasn't been communicated to them where the appropriate place is. That's why they're going wherever they want. Now, when you yell at them for going inside, since they don't know where is the appropriate place to go yet, they haven't been rewarded really for going outside, knowing that that's where they go. Now they're just going to see that you're yelling at them for using the bathroom, right? So when you take them outside, they're a lot less likely to want to use the bathroom in front of you because they're afraid that they're going to get punished by you for using the bathroom, period. Right? That's how they're going to associate it. So we don't want to yell at them, spank them, rub their face in it, any of that if they go inside. We just clean it up, unemotionally clean it up. We put them outside. And then when they are outside, whenever the moment is that they use the bathroom outside, whether it's pissing or shitting, you want to reward them. You want, yes, good boy, get excited, turn it into a party, throw some treats to them, whatever you need to do to let them realize that what they just did was what they needed to do.
All right.
Yep.
So the dog is 6 months old.
Mm-hmm.
The dog is 6 months old, and he kind of, I don't know where my uncle got him from, but I feel like he has a pretty good understanding to me in my brain because every time we take him out, that's when he uses the restroom, or he'll go
Okay.
next to the door when he needs to use the restroom. I don't know why he did that this time
Well,
because
maybe he just had to go. Dogs have accidents too.
nah, dude, he was like four of them. I was yelling at him to stop because he just
Yeah.
kept doing it, and I was
Yeah.
trying to pick him up, but he just kept. Oh man, it was a mess.
Yeah. Yeah. I bet. But and it can be frustrating. We just have to take a step back sometimes. And if we're gritting our teeth when it comes to dog training, that's when we have to walk away, right? Decompress
That's what I
ourselves.
was thinking. That's
Yeah.
actually what I was thinking. Um, but
Yeah.
I don't know because that's how I've ever that's the only way I've ever seen. I'm open minded.
Oh
I'm
yeah, for
open
sure.
minded.
I'm glad you're up here
That's the only
talking about
way.
it.
No, it was because she actually was talking about it, and we had a discussion, and then we were talking about like child psychology and stuff like that. But I feel like it's different because you
So
can't just.
it's similar. It's similar with some differences, right? So learning theory across the board with any animal that's cognitive enough to learn learns through association. So operant conditioning,
Are you
classical
talking about
conditioning. Yeah,
behaviorism?
yeah, behaviorism. So children, adults, people, humans, dogs, cats, birds, they all learn the same way, right? So operant conditioning would pretty much mean that they're learning through experience, right? Whether something feels good or doesn't feel good, right? Classical conditioning is when they form a new emotional state towards something through repetitive occurrences, right? So when something's consistently repetitive, let's say every single time the dog goes outside, a squirrel attacks the dog. Now the dog's going to have an emotional response towards the squirrels, right? And that's classical conditioning right there. And then there's also observational learning. It's harder to capitalize training a dog with observational learning, but they still can learn through observation. So that means that no matter what we're doing throughout the day, no matter what the dog's doing throughout the day, even if we're not actively training, the dog is still learning, right?
All right.
And so yeah, like looking into how children learn is a smart thing to do because you're starting to learn about learning theory. And once you learn learning theory, that can be applied to dogs as well. And all dog training is manipulating learning theory in order to get the behaviors that we want
All
and
right.
decrease the
Okay.
behaviors we don't want.
Have you ever spanked a dog?
Yeah, yeah, a long time ago.
Okay. So would you say with your history of spanking dogs and not spanking dogs, which one did they learn quicker? Which one
The
did they
non
learn
the
quicker with?
non-spanking because there's a lot more effective punishments that you can utilize than spanking a dog
Are
that
you like the
communicates a lot
kennel
more
time
solidly.
or no?
Say again?
The kennel time or like you
So
put them inside of a kennel?
kennels should not be punishment because dogs have a very small window of our reward or punishing marker. Um, for them to be able to understand what we're trying to communicate based on what behavior they just did, right? And so when let's say they did something, let's say they tore up a couch cushion, and by the time we take them and put them in the kennel and they're sitting in the kennel, they've completely forgot that they tore up that couch cushion, and now they're just wondering why they're stuck in this kennel, and now
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
making
yeah.
it
No,
kennel
but
aversive.
that's that. Like my understanding is that like that's why like you put their nose in it, so that way
Nope.
there they can associate. And they don't make the association, or
No, they're gonna make the wrong association. They're gonna associate an aversive, but they're not gonna associate it with them going inside.
then what do you do?
You make it more rewarding to go outside than inside, and then you
No,
can
but like,
also train.
what if he tears up the couch cushion? Like, what do you do?
If you didn't catch it right then and there, you do nothing because the dog won't associate it.
And
They're
it
just
just it wouldn't even be like worth doing anything at that point.
yeah. You can if they're still on the couch, you can say off, remove them from the couch. You can say no. But other than that, you can't really do much punishment for something that's already been done that the dog's already moved past.
Do you think that it's like long term negatively? Because like, here, let me turn my camera. Okay, so I'm at my mom's house right now. These
Okay.
are they have a dog too. These are some of the toys.
Yeah.
So basically, um, the dog will either sleep with one of my sisters or in here.
Okay.
And like, let's say if he like tears up something or if he like poos or pees on the floor, he's like a year old, so he like pretty much never does that. Um, they'll spank him and then put him inside of here. Um, and if he cries, they'll put a blanket over it. What do you think of this? Is this
No, it's poor training, is what it is.
okay? Okay,
It's poor
because I
training.
don't know. I feel like you'd
So
know.
what a lot of times happens when it comes to pet owners is that what they find is nothing else that they've been trying is working, but the moment that they do like a spank, they finally see some ounce of progress, and then they think it's the right way to go. When
That's what
there's
I'm at
so
right now.
many,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
exactly, and but there's so many other better ways to go that is more effective in teaching a dog. So
So what do I do? Like I come in here and then there's like let's say you just tore up something right here.
mhm.
What exactly do I do step by step?
Okay, so did you watch him while he was trying to tear it up?
No.
Okay, so if he tore something up and he's playing with the whatever he's playing with, no, leave it, and then take your dog and remove him from the space, and clean up, right? And then what you need to be doing is need to be working on regular daily obedience training, whether it's 15 minutes a day is all it takes, right? And you need to be consistent about stuff. What's happening is the dog finds it fun, right? The dog may be bored, but they find it fun. So when they went and tore up that couch cushion, they've already increased their behavior, right? They reinforced that behavior because it was super fun. So we need to, right? You can
Oh, I'm
be
sorry,
very
you
consistent
lagged out. You
about you're
lagged
not
out for
allowed on the
like
couch
the
anytime
last
they get on the.
7 seconds. I'm sorry. Can you please repeat that?
Um, so okay, so back to what I was saying. Training. So 15 minutes a day is all it takes for training. Am I still lagging, y'all?
No, you're good. You're good.
Um, so 15 minutes a day of training and being consistent with boundaries, right? Let's say the dog is tearing up a couch cushion because they've reinforced the behavior is fun for them. They could be bored. The 15 minutes of mental stimulation could help with that boredom. On top of that, if getting on the couch and tearing up stuff is a problem, then be consistent about not letting them on the couch. No, you don't get to be on the couch at all until it's very clear to the dog that they're not allowed to just get up on the couch unless you say so, right? And so anytime they get on the couch, no, remove them from the couch. You can push them off the couch, no big deal.
Is there
And
any cons? Is there any cons to spanking them?
yeah, there's a lot of cons. So when you spank a dog, especially when it's not clear why you're spanking them, they will end up not trusting you. They will end up seeing you as an aversive and you as something to be afraid of. And then that's when you see dogs out there that are ticking time bombs, they don't show any signs of behavioral aggression, and then all of a sudden they just snap and attack their owners. That's why.
Because they were spanked.
Because they were spanked.
All
Because they
right.
were
Okay.
spanked, hit, because it was nothing but high level punishments with no clear message to the dog. Um, that's why.
All right. Well, I'm gonna drop you a follow. I'm about to have to go to class,
Oh,
but I
absolutely. And
appreciate
come
that.
back
I'm gonna
anytime. And
talk
if
to
you
her
have,
about that.
yeah, come back anytime. And if
Um,
you check out a lot of my videos, most of them are training videos, and I work with aggression and reactivity for the most part. But I do go into high level conversations and topics. And you can also check out my page and see my podcast. And I do go over even a lot higher level stuff on there too.
all right. All right. Well, thank you, man.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for coming up here and talking.
All right. Have a good day, man.
Yep, you too. Thanks, Sam. Yeah, no, that was great, and that's the one thing that I try to do so much is I try not to completely destroy somebody for doing something poorly, right? Like I don't agree with spanking a dog, but I can understand why people do it because not everybody's a professional. And if everything they've tried is not working, and the moment they hit their dog, they see some progress, they're probably going to keep doing it because they think that's the only thing that's working for that dog, right? I've been asked time and time again, will you work with somebody that has a known history of abusing their dog or hitting their dog? Yeah, absolutely, because that's probably the reason why. They're frustrated. They don't know what to do. They're not a professional. They don't understand learning theory to a certain degree. And when I come in and teach them a better way that's showing even more progress, it is highly likely they're going to stop that hitting behavior or the spanking behavior as a human. Because all they want to see progress. They just don't know how to get there. Hello,
Hello.
Andy. How are you?
Good. I just wanted to say something, and then you can respond after.
Yeah.
I just think it's funny that people think that you could completely train a dog. I don't think that's possible because I feel like they're always at the end of the day. Yeah, you could train them to an extent, but I feel like they, at the end of the day, they're gonna have their own they're in their own nature. And I was an Amazon worker, and every time I went out delivering, I would run into people who would be outside on the porch with their dog with no leash, and the owner would tell me, "Oh, it's friendly," and I'm like, "Okay," and I would walk up, and the dog would start attacking me. Why? Because it's their nature to protect their master or their territory. Like it's
So
it's
it's not
just funny
always
to
their
me.
nature, the protection. Unless the dog is trained for protection work, the dog's not being protective, they're being reactive, right? The dog's probably overstimulated, they don't know you, they're wary about it. You're making eye contact, walking in their direction. Now they're even more afraid and they're like, get out of my fucking space, right? Now, I never trust an owner when they say my dog's friendly, ever. Every single dog out there is an opportunistic predator with little knives in their mouth. I don't trust people and their dogs, right?
Right.
And I absolutely agree. You're never going to 100% train your dog. And I know people out there like, my dog's 100% trained. Like define 100% train. This is what I always ask people. Define 100% train, because to them, their version of train might be different than my version of train, which might be different than your version of train, right? It's all semantics right there.
Yeah.
What do we find as train? I let my dogs dig holes in my yard. Somebody else that has an HOA might freak out because their dog's digging holes in the yard and might think my dogs are untrained. No, it's just that's something I find acceptable for my house. And that's
I feel like
completely
when
fine.
people say my dog is fully trained, I feel like most of the time they mean that he's fully controlled and obedient.
Yeah, more or less, or they have like a behaviorally sound disposition about them.
Yeah.
But training never ends, as Tally said in the comments.
Right,
Training
right.
never ends; it's a lifelong thing. And yes, dogs will always gravitate towards what feels good, what's more enticing to them, right? So even if
Yeah.
your dog is fully trained, in your opinion, let's say they have a 99.9% recall, that 0.01%, when they see something like a squirrel or a rabbit and decide that looks fun, I'm gonna chase it. Now is your dog fully trained? You know, like now would you consider it fully trained? No, it's dogs left to their own devices are going to always choose what they find more appealing, what they find that feels better to them, that kicks off those feel good chemicals in their brain. And they're going to stay away from what doesn't feel good. And so yeah, no dog is ever fully trained. The moment we stop training is the moment we end up with behavioral issues.
And yeah, and I just want to say, all you dog owners out there, this is one of my biggest pet peeves. I take public transportation, and when I'm waiting at the bus, many times this has happened to me. Someone's walking their dog, and you know those leashes that stretch,
Yeah,
they don't
retractable.
lock it to keep them at a certain distance. And then what bothers me is that the dog comes up always, and it's happened to me all the time. A lot of times they come up and they lick you. Don't let your dog lick people. We don't know what
Yeah.
your dogs carry. We don't know if you vaccinate your dogs. We don't know if your dog don't have rabies. I
Not
feel like
even
that should
just
be normal
that.
to like
Not
don't let
even
your
just
dogs
that.
close to
That
people.
dog may end up deciding to bite you. Like, I mean, there's so many things. Like
Exactly.
retractables. I personally love retractables for me because I will lock it and I will use it as like a 5 foot or 4 foot or 6 foot leash as it's locked, or I'll have it as a long line when I'm working on recall training or something, and I don't have to worry about rolling it up. I dislike it when other people use them because they use them so poorly.
Right. Yeah. Well, it should be. I think it should be a new normal as well that we, as people, don't be too trusting of our dogs off a leash too.
Yep. Yep.
Some people
Absolutely.
are very comfortable with that, and I don't think that's right. And then they get mad, like, because I've seen this happen too. They get mad, like I've seen dogs attack people, like
Yep.
because they're not on the leash, and then the person defends himself, and the owner gets mad at the person. Like, you should get mad
Yeah.
at your dog because you don't have him in control.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I have a topic that I put up every so often, and it says your dog is not special, right? And that's the reason
Right.
for it, is because all these people that think their dog is so special, they can let their dog off leash, run up and harass other people and their dogs, and then ends up causing a fight. And then, oh no, it's not my dog's fault. You should control your dog. It's like, but your dog was off leash. Your dog's not special.
Exactly.
Yep, yep, 100%.
Cool.
I agree.
Well, it was nice talking to you, and have a good day. I like that we agreed on that.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. You have a great day.
You too. Bye bye.
Yeah, Colby, how's it going? And I did see a comment about the coal thing. Tally was asking how I feel about the coal thing. So the Cole thing where he beat the crap out of his dog and they were laughing about it is very different than a owner just being frustrated and spanking their dog because they have they don't see any other progress and they have no idea how to train and stuff. They thought it was funny to beat the shit out of their dog, and he definitely doesn't deserve to own dogs, period. Oh man, see, I should change the topic to your dog's not special, but I'm not going to. I want to talk about dog training on a high level instead of arguing with people today. Your dog's better than me, Preston, most likely. Your dog is most likely better than me as an individual. Your dog is probably better than me. I'm not always a nice person. All right, I'm going to let Sam up. Hello, Sam.
Hey, so in reference to the discussion that you were having about antiquated perspectives, I just wanted to really quick share when I changed my mind. And now, full disclaimer, I am not a dog trainer. I have no
Okay.
desire to work with other people's dogs. I do my own thing, right?
Cool. So you're gonna let us know a little bit of anecdotal experience and
Yes,
talk about it.
yes,
Okay,
I
cool.
am. I'm going to
Okay.
share, and then I'll ask you a question because I feel like it's a good marker on where the change occurs. So,
Okay.
I used to feel the same way that the guest that was previous felt, like in antiquated points of view. You rub their nose in it if they go to the bathroom on the floor, things like that. And I had no idea that there was a different method to do anything until
Yeah.
2019 when I watched Puppy Culture. And
Yeah.
so it was really strange when I watched Puppy Culture, and instead of it was the resource guarding section with a puppy who had a raw meat bone. And in the puppy culture segment, it talked about how to condition the dog to avoid resource guarding in anything they're going to have, and acknowledge human response coming towards them as a good thing. It's to always bring something of higher value and
Hmm.
wait until they disengage from whatever they have. And at the time, I was thinking to myself, why would you reward a puppy for growling over something? It didn't make any sense to me. And the more I watched it and the more I learned about it, I was like, it does. It makes completely perfect sense. I can't believe the entire time I had those antiquated perspectives. And that was really the point of change where I started
Yeah.
seeing dog behavior a lot differently. So I wanted to ask, what was your point of change when you migrated from an antiquated perspective to more modern things?
Um, Probably around 2013. Before that, I was just a dog owner. And then what I was doing at the time was I was in operations management, helping businesses grow, and I fell into the dog industry, helping dog industry businesses grow, more like boutique salons, facilities that had puppy training classes. And what I found was that whenever people would like call out of work, I'd have to deal with the clients, right? I'd have to deal with them being mad. And so I decided I'm going to learn how to do this. So I had people mentor me, and then I started teaching some puppy classes, and that was my turning point of just from being a pet owner and just understanding things from like watching TV or what worked for me, to actually going in a higher level and understanding, learning theory and canine behavior. And that was the turning point for me because I knew no better. And then once I became educated, that's when things really started turning around for me, on that aspect. And that's the big reason why we do these lives, is because the more people that pop in and learn something, I feel like I've done something better in this world, you know? So it's definitely self-serving.
Yeah,
But
100%. And I just, I think that the way that you handled that, and I'm not like, tooting your horn or anything. I don't want to make your head too big, but the way that you handled that person was absolutely fantastic. Like I would not have handled that in the same
well,
manner at all.
well, the thing is like my profession. What I do now, is I specialize in reactivity and aggression. And majority of the times when dogs are well over that limit to where they're dangerous, a lot of times it's because of environmental factors or owner factors, and it's most likely owner factors, right? And so I've had to learn how to communicate with people to how to make them change their behaviors in a better way. And if I come at somebody and chew them out or shove down their throat, make them feel like they're shit, that does nothing beneficial for anybody, especially the dog. So yeah, letting them talk and trying to figure out, okay, why? What's the reason why? And with that gentleman that was up earlier, the reason why was because that's all he's ever seen, and that's the only time he's ever seen progress. Okay, cool. Now that we can figure out the baseline of their behaviors and the reason why they're, as a human, doing that, let's discuss the reasons why you shouldn't, and let's discuss what you can do differently.
Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing with me.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for coming up here and talking. Absolutely. The more we educate, that's it. The more we can educate ourselves, the better off the dogs are going to be.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to drop down and allow more guests to come up with you.
For sure. I'm trying to go up and see some comments. I saw that Colby was commenting in there, and I wanted to see what was said originally. They said my dog's special. That's where I left off. Scroll. Because there was everything your dog does wrong could have been avoided. Once people realize that, their problems go away. Absolutely. Yeah. That goes back into the owners make things too complicated. They make things way too complicated than they need to be. If you are always focused on not letting the bad situations happen and always having wins for your dog in all situations, then your dog's going to be extremely well-mannered and balanced behaviorally. What happens a lot is people do the socialization wrong. The associations get screwed up in the dog's mind because of the socialization being done wrong, and then then they're like, what do I do now? And they try to do all these complicated training methodologies when all they really needed to do was go out there and let the dog exist in the real world without having to meet every single dog in person. So that way there's no aversives happening to the dog, or there's no bads, right?
Yeah.
Poor behavior of other dogs, poor behavior of people, things that make the dog anxious or fearful. You don't have any of that when you're working at a little distance, when you're environmentally socializing your dog. And if you can just do that, that will solve a lot of the problems when it comes to poor socialization. It won't solve every problem when it gets past a certain threshold of issues, especially when the issues are stacked. But, I mean, it's a good start. Like, yeah. Creating frustration builds a stronger recall. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Colby. Thanks for stopping in. So association. Association is a fun topic I like talking about because anything in training will all dwindle down to how the dog associates, right? And that even goes with, like, if we're going with learning theory, operant conditioning, rewards, punishers, us as the humans don't get to decide if we're giving the dog a reward or a punishment. We can think that's what we're doing, but depending on the outcome, what the dog associates to change the behaviors with that reward or punishment, the outcome is really what's going to tell us if it was a reward or a punishment. But yeah, dogs can associate all day long, and environmentally they're likely making associations that we don't even know about. And so, like, understanding your dog, paying attention, head on a swivel, just watching your dog will go a very long way with understanding why the dog is acting a certain way. But again, owners making things too complicated, right? So associations, right? Let's go with that backtrack to the person that was up a couple people ago that was, rubbing the dog's face in the poop and spanking the dog. We're, as humans, thinking that the dogs can comprehend that it's because they went inside. When we have to look at it at a very baseline, if the dog doesn't know what it's expected and what's expected of it, how is it going to know that going inside is bad, using the bathroom inside is bad? They're not. They're just going to make an association that this human hurt me. and there's this poop here. Maybe I shouldn't go in front of this human because I'm afraid I'm going to get hurt for pooping. Yeah, so looking at how the dog could potentially associate our human actions is super important. Excuse me. When we incorporated Hayes into the household, he was fed outside while the other two were fed inside until they were fully accustomed to each other's behaviors and dynamics. So that way I can start feeding them in a group. But I definitely, just like Colby was saying down there, pack feeding is Colby's go-to for solving so many issues. I'm the same way. Because like when it comes to feeding, food is an extremely high level resource for dogs. Extremely high level resource for dogs.
When you say pack feeding, are you like pack feeding out of the same dishes, or just
no,
like
not necessarily feeding with each other, like in a group setting.
All in the same setting? Gotcha.
Yeah.
I did it.
Yeah.
I just pour a pile of food on the ground. You know what I'm saying? But I stand there and make, regulate.
Right.
And,
Johnny, how many you got?
I have 2 right now.
Gotcha.
What's up, bullies? Yeah, so when it comes to the pack feeding, the group feeding, it allows you to see which dogs are going to try to dominate the resources, and then you can step in and make sure the situation is very clear to the dogs what is acceptable and not acceptable, and then the dogs can start having a better dynamic with each other and understanding different behaviors are not acceptable, especially when it comes to such a high level resource like food.
Right. And when
pouring food on the ground does help too. I normally don't do that until I know that they can eat very closely in their own dishes, very, very nicely, and I know that they're not going to be in each other's face trying to get each other's food. At that point, yeah, you can pour the food all over the ground and let them have at it.
Yeah, but another good thing to pouring it on the ground is it's like a surplus of food, so it kind of brings down the value. You know what I'm saying? Like you said, food is a very high value resource. But if there's so much of it for everybody to have, you know what I'm saying? Again, while you're there to regulate, it kind of takes the edge off.
I mean, it can, but it can also increase unwanted behaviors if it's not managed appropriately. Good examples would be, let's say one of the dogs is a straight up glutton. You have a lab. Straight up glutton wants to eat all of the food and scarf it down as fast as possible, making the other dogs there not be able to get their fill. Now the other dogs are going to start, every time the food is poured like that, the other dogs are going to want to resource guard that food because they've never been able to actually get their fill because the other dog scarfs it down too fast. So management is really important in making sure that they all get theirs while not allowing them to display unwanted behaviors.
Yeah, it's kind of like a jackpot feed kind of thing.
Oh, Colby, yes, come up here so we can discuss a little bit. 1 second. All right. I had a phone call, so it muted me for a second. What's up, Colby? How are you?
Good. How's it going?
Man, it is going. It's going.
So on the pack feeding, especially with pouring food, so like with Zeus, when I brought him home, I didn't pack feed him. I didn't do anything. I just built him in slowly, feed in and put him in a kennel and feed him separately, and then build into that to now. I pour food on the ground, right? You pour food on the ground, and they're all going crazy, right? Then you say the dog's name, whatever dog you want. You say their name, and they're in the middle of full-on eating, right? They pop their head up, boom, I hit them with a jackpot or something more higher value than what they're eating. So now, anytime my dogs are eating, no matter what they're doing, I can just say their name, and they're like, fuck what I'm eating now, I'm getting something better. My head pops up, boom, I feed that dog. But I just use spatial pressure when I'm bringing a new dog in, so they kind of learn the rules. But my pack feeding comes all the way down to feeding my cat raw venison at the same time, and she just sits there and eats her venison, and the dogs all leave her alone, and the new dog always has a hard time figuring that one out. But once they figure it out, they got it, and it's all just done with spatial pressure and time, and it works out.
For sure. I like to do similar stuff. Like, for instance, when I'm doing impulse control, I'm doing a jackpot of high level rewards on the ground and see how long they can sit there and not go after the jackpot, and eventually I'll release them. Yeah, jackpot, there you go, just to work on their impulse control. And then also with the off switch, recall training. I do a lot of recall training with super high value rewards, so that way I can try to supersede certain motivations. So let's say they want to go and bury a tree because they see a squirrel. They can be in the middle of whatever their focus is, and just with a quick command, they're like, oh yeah, let's get back there, because they're going to have something really good. Absolutely. Like, that can go on a lot of different spectrums with dog training, doing exactly what you were explaining.
Yeah, it's just taking the time to do it. Most people don't want to take the time and go out there and, be out there with the dogs while they eat. But that's the main thing. You feed them, and then you just sit out there with them while they're eting. My dogs eat and if you give me a dog and they say they don't have food drive, after like 3 days at my house, have you ever heard the experiment with how they feed pigs? Well, they'll take pigs and they'll play the sounds of pigs eating while they're feeding their pigs. And that will get the pigs to eat even faster and build more food drive. Most people are trying to use slow feeders and all this stuff to slow their dogs down. I don't mind building food drive, so I'll do things to get them to eat faster and build the food drive. And then once you have that, you can use it for lots of other things.
Yeah, there's very rarely do I want a dog to stop eating so fast, and it's usually when, like, I have a video of one of the dogs. It's a Dachshund, right? And this one dog, man, you put the food down and within like 2 seconds it's gone. It's just gone. He's eating so fast that he's gonna puke it back up. That's the only time that I'll utilize like a slow feeder. Other than that, is like, build that food drive, make them want to scarf it down, so that way training's even more effective and easier. Yeah, and the time thing, Colby, I think that's a huge thing. A lot of owners don't want to spend the time. And me as a trainer, I do, go to somebody's house, do like a 30-minute or hour session, depending on what they want. And a lot of times people they don't want to do every single day of the week. They want to do like once a week, right? So I have to put in perspective, okay, what can I do within this hour to help set certain baselines with the dogs, as well as set up the owner for success to where they can continue that during the week until I come back next time, because there's a lot of time in that week that the owners can screw things up, right? And so as a trainer, doing and working in that capacity, sometimes it's a lot harder for me to go about things the long routes, where like you were talking about, like the watching them every day eat type thing and do stuff like that. But yeah, I try to hit it home with every single owner to spend the time with the dogs, do the work, or why have a dog in the first place? Oh, RPG, I love clients that do all their homework. I really do. I really, really do. It makes me happy. And it's funny, like, when you see a client that does their homework, you get back like a week later and you can see like how much their handling skills have improved during that week, because they've actually been hands-on the entire time. It's great.
I'm taking a class right now. It's a force-free distraction training class. And it's interesting to see, because there's like 5 or 6 people in the class with me, and it's force-free. So I took my e-collar collar, and because they're thinner and biothane, and I'm using that as my collar on the dog. And some other people, there's one lady with a big border collie on a harness, and it literally pulled her down the other day. Like, okay, even though it's force free, you don't have to have a harness on your dog. You could switch to a normal collar. First day was a little tricky. First class was a little tricky because Zeus is big and he's not used to just pulling me around on a flat collar. But second training session went pretty good. He still gets a little bit interested in other dogs, but he's breaking out of it pretty quick. But I like the trainer, so I can work with everything she teaches me, and then at the same time I can go and use a prong when I get home and speed things up that way.
Yeah, I have no problem with force-free. The only problems I've ever had with force-free training is when somebody is a force-free trainer, and just because their methods don't work, they blame the dog. and I have a problem with that. I have no problem with using reward based methods. That should be the majority of your training anyway. Even if you are going to use tools, majority should be reward based anyway. But even so, like I have taken classes as well on the force free side just to increase my capabilities of doing things that way. I don't have to always use e-collars and prong collars. I like to have as many tools in my tool belt as possible.
The thing that's interesting about it is, if some of these trainers would train with her, but did use tools, they would be able to get going much quicker. It wouldn't be such near as long of a process. But one of the owners was going to get a cat, and the trainer's like, "Yeah, your dog is going to just end up killing that cat." And then she asked me, like, you have dogs and cats and chickens, and how do you do? I go, I don't think you want to know my method,
Right.
But it's going to work, right? Your dog is going to be happy. Everybody's going to live in harmony. And you can have a cat if you want to have a cat, right? But,
Yeah, I had a hell of a lot of R plus and force free trainers go after me about a month and a half ago. I ended up getting a bunch of chickens, and after they grew a bunch, I decided to build their run and stuff, and it's in their yard space. And my husky was just straight up trying to unalive these chickens, not listen to any type of commands. I'm like, all right, I'm cranking this e-collar up and you're going to get shocked. Like, this is enough. This is dangerous behavior. And I put it out there and showed what happened. And guess who can live comfortably with these chickens and not go after them? My husky. My husky still gets to live the best life and do whatever it wants in our yard space and doesn't really care about the chickens for the most part. Sometimes he stalks a little bit, but then I recall and he's fine. But yeah, people did not like seeing a dog yelp.
Well, it creates avoidance, and they're like, avoidance is bad. I'm like, no, I want avoidance in the beginning. It's going to create avoidance. And then once the avoidance wears off, then the dog is going to start to be curious again. But because you have that foundation, then like very small, like, hey, is going to stop the dog from going after the chicken because you've already have a foundation. Like, hey, you know the rules. Don't do that. Like, oh yeah, I'm not supposed to chase chickens. But if you go out there and my way of doing it, I don't know if you saw my cat video. My cat video is very similar to what I did with the chickens. And the cat video got a million comments on how I did it wrong. And I'm like, well, I don't have any fallout. My dog is living with my cats in harmony. And to me, it worked out. So I basically did them in order. First we worked chickens, and then we did cats, and then we did livestock, and every session got easier. So now if I'm out there and, I run into some cows, I'm like, we're good. The dogs know the whole cow thing. I don't even have to worry. Like I took 4 dogs on a walk at lunch, all off leash, 3 of them on e-collars, and I never pushed a single button. I didn't need to. Their recalls were beautiful. But if I didn't have those e-collars, I probably would have been I would have been more on edge. Like, oh shit, I hope like somebody doesn't come jogging with 2 dogs and here I've got 4 and I'm not sure if I can pull them all together real quick. Where with e-collars, I'm like, nope, I'm guaranteed I'm going to get my dog.
It does upset me sometimes. I'm sure you've heard this plenty of times where a large side of a community will say that basically talk some smack about how people say, like, even if your dog doesn't need the e-collar, you're going to put it on your dog for just in case, it's foolproof basically in a way, or that kind of situation. And it's like, what do people not understand, that even if my dog is 99.9% recall trained, that 0.01% can happen, and that can be very dangerous to the dog, other animals, or a person. I'm not going to let that happen.
Yeah, it makes the walk or adventure or whatever you're doing more enjoyable for you. Therefore, it makes it more enjoyable for the dogs, because you're like, I'm good. I've got my safety net. We're fine. I know I'm going to get, because you never know what you're going to run into. And the other day, my wife's like, hey, I invited some friends to walk with us. I'm like, all right, well, we have a truck full of dogs, and they have a Malinois, and then they have a little tiny dog, and little tiny dogs scare me the most, because a little tiny dog can get shredded quickly. That's the last thing I want to ever happen. Yeah. And so we took Zeus, and we introduced Zeus to the other Malinois first, got him to where I wasn't worried about it then, but get that over with, and then I let Flicka out, let everybody else out. Let Flicka out. Flicka's the one that you got to be careful with because she's like a light switch, perfect, and then boom, let her out. And then when she's out, I remind her. I just even use tone on that. So just remind her, hey, you're wearing your e-collar. I need you to be good, and let's go. And immediately we start walking. And I don't know if you saw the video, but the little puppy at the end, because I did a video of it, the little puppy at the end.
I was showing on video a little bit ago when my dogs were out. My Catahoula leopard dog, a hunting dog, was.
You cut out. Can you guys all hear him?
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah. He cut out. I don't even know if he could hear me.
His shit gets all wonky. He'll be back in a second.
Back, guys. He'll be back. Give him a minute.
Yeah. Every like 30 minutes or so, TikTok shoves me off of my own live, and I just have to join back in. Sorry about that. But yeah, my hula was stalking the chickens, and I just walked down the yard and I just recalled her real quick. She's naked, no e-collar on. Recalled her real quick because she has had such a high level baseline set. She knows exactly what the expectations are, and it was extremely easy for me to just say, "Leave it, come." And she's like, "Okay, I'll leave it." Like, I really want to stalk these things, but she understands the boundaries. Yeah, you were talking, Colby. You were talking about that person that was on the harness, and the dog pretty much almost pulled them over. One thing a lot of people on these platforms, the social media platforms, dislike about me, I'm sure you've seen me on a couple of blacklist videos and stuff, is because they think that I'm full compulsion training, because they don't really look at my content in depth. And what they see is when I have a new client where the dog is aggressive, reactive, something going on where they're displaying dangerous behaviors, I will lean into the punishment side of things first, and before I do the reward-based training. And people don't like that. And the reason why I do that, though, is because in my perspective, that owner needs to be able to be safe. That owner needs to be able to get a handle on things, and unless we nip these behaviors in the butt right now, then I'm not going to set that owner up for success for when we do reward-based training.
100%, you're right. I think.
Why would you do them both at the same time? Like if you watch the video I did with Zeus, we're walking down, this dog comes flying at us. It's in a underground fence. He puffs up, I back away, I pop him a little bit on the prong, but at the same time, I'm like, come over here, buddy, right? So I'm not telling him no. I never said no. I never said anything. All I did was use the prong to say, hey, and maybe it'll be harder for somebody with bad timing to say, hey, nope, come this way. As soon as he comes this way, boom, reward him. He goes back and he wants to interact with the other dog. If he's neutral, he's fine. If he starts, kind of puffing up, get him on the prong a little bit, boom, back, here we come. I like to take my if you're going to do correction or punishment, whatever you call it, and immediately follow up with the reward for what they're doing correctly, then
Yes.
you're good. But if you're just like hammer on the dog and you don't give them anything else, now the dog's like, oh shit, I just got in trouble. And they're kind of walking along and they're like, I'm not sure what I should do, kind of that uncomfortable stage, where if you're just like, oh, come on over here, and boom, all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, it's so nice over here with Dad. And when I'm focusing on him, everything's great. We're having a good time. Look back over at the other dog. And then like, no, I'm just going to go with Dad. And you can see in the video how fast he goes from reactive to neutral and just using the prong and then hitting him with positive, it's food.
It's very, very, very nice when I get to see this. And it's when you do have a reactive dog. And a lot of times it's because the dog has never had proper guidance. They don't know what to do. And they've been waiting their whole life for guidance. And then when you finally give them that guidance they need and very, very nicely communicate what is acceptable and unacceptable behavior, and this is what you do to get the rewards, and this is what you shouldn't do at all, man, just seeing, like, you can see relief in the dog. You can see them just decompress. You can see the stress levels drop. And just seeing that is so rewarding as a trainer, as a human. It's just so rewarding.
I noticed a lot or have you guys noticed, when you come up with a client who has a quote-unquote reactive dog, lunging, growling, barking, all that stuff, the moment you take the leash from the owner and you walk the dog away from the owner, it's a different dog.
Oh, it happens a lot.
It
happens a lot.
It's funny because it goes back to everything we were talking about, from guidance to when to correct, and what Kobe was saying, immediate reward right after. because, and I'm guilty of this too when I was first learning, a lot of people, especially pet owners, they hold resentments. Not necessarily, or I don't want to say resentment, that might not be the correct word, but they correct their dog for doing something that they deem that's inappropriate, and instead of immediately rewarding the good behavior, like for example, I'm gonna use Kobe's cat video. He stimmed Zeus. He yelped, came back running. The moment Zeus came back to Kobe, was right next to Kobe. Kobe wasn't mad. He wasn't angry. He wasn't tense. Good Zeusy.
Very neutral emotions. So what I found a lot of times with owners that have reactive dogs is that the owners are just as reactive when it comes to corrections and stuff as the dog is being reactive, and they're not neutral. And yes, their emotional standpoint is making things worse. The way they've handled the dog has made things worse. So yeah, when you get control of the dog, it's night and day a lot of times, because the dog doesn't have any of those associations with you. You're calm. You're communicating appropriately and effectively with the dog based on your handling skills. And that's why, training these dogs most of the time is training the owner.
Yeah, 100%. And then if the owner has to be receptive to it too, because I've gotten some that just in one ear, out the other. It's like, hey, I'm trying to help you, but you just don't either like me, you don't like my methods or whatever. But it's funny, like the dog I was telling you about, wife is amazing. Wife handles the dog, does everything he's supposed to. Husband is choking up on the leash and like, hey, relax. Hey, let's talk about this a little bit. He's flustered. And it got to the point I told him, like, you want to know what your problem is? You get so frustrated, it goes in one ear, out the other. You don't want to say nobody. He's like, yeah, you're right.
I like that. Well, he's been trained, or he should know better. And I'm like, well, no. If something is not working, you can always look back and say, well, what did I do wrong? And you can always, like, I look back anytime there's a mistake. What did I do wrong? What was different? Why did it not work this time? And then I can go back and say, okay, I know what I did wrong, and I'm going to fix it, right? If I take my dog to a place and it's not going to sit down in that particular place, I'm like, well, have we ever tried to train sit in this situation, right? Have we ever tried to train sit with this much arousal? Have we ever tried to do this when the dog is in this mode? And then I can always blame it back on myself and then say, go back to the drawing board, do more training, work on it. But I did see Timon, she said, it's not always appropriate to reward after a correction in that scenario, though, which I'm not totally sure what she's talking about. But I would like to know what she is thinking. But
what we talking? Yeah.
Anyway, that's kind of like I always look at it. I'll freaking lay in bed and go, okay, why didn't that work? Oh wait, now I know why it didn't work. Or sometimes I know right away. I'm like, oops, I shouldn't have done that. It's interesting the people you had on originally who were talking about like banking dogs and talking about dogs, not being potty trained and all that shit, and you're just like, where have they been? If your dog won't go to the bathroom in front of you, you screwed up. I mean, there's a problem there, unless it's a rescue dog and you haven't had a chance to go back and, fix it so the dog is comfortable with that.
Yeah.
But, So she's got, Timon, you gotta keep up here a little better. You go in, you go out, you just pop comments. Maybe we should just get you on, because I know that you have.
Okay, so Timon, so let's say my dog is chasing my chickens, and I correct that dog. I use an e-collar, make the correction, so they have a fear response, and that's what I want. I want that to not feel good, right? And then I recall them, and then I am going to reward that recall, because I'm rewarding the recall, right? I corrected or use a punisher, a high-level punisher, to make it aversive to do said action, and that communicated with the dog that action didn't feel good. And then when they recall, that recall action did feel good, and that's why I'm going to reward that. If that makes sense. Colby, so the best thing that I've ever done for clients ever was start recording every single training session, right? And then showing them what they look like when they're handling the leash. And then I can dissect it for them, and they can physically see from an outside perspective what is going on. And by them being able to look at themselves from the outside looking in, changes things so quickly.
Well, it changes me. I made a video one time and doing something, and then it was an older video, and then I looked at it later. I'm like, man, my timing sucked. Like that was terrible. Like so. No, the more you record, the more you totally pick up on your mistakes and your timing and things like that. And I think that's the problem with e-collars is that people use them and their timing sucks so bad. My rule is if you miss the opportunity, you miss the opportunity. You have to wait until the next opportunity. You definitely can't. You definitely can't push the button. It's just like rewarding a dog for a sit after they're out of the sit. You're like, okay, what did I reward for? Right? The timing has to be right. Yeah.
We had the guy come up earlier. I don't know if you were still in here, but he was talking about like the dog, peeing and pooping inside, and he rubbing the face in it and spanking the dog and so on, right? I had the long conversation with them on, why that's not appropriate, what it's teaching the dog and so on, right? And he eventually was talking about like, what if, I come home and the dog like tore up the couch cushions. What do I do to punish? And I said, you don't do anything. You clean up the mess. Is what you do, and then you start working on obedience training, setting boundaries. If getting up on the couch is a problem, then the dog's not allowed on the couch anymore. If tearing things up while you're gone is a problem, put the dog in a crate. The dog should be in a crate anyway when nobody's around to watch the dog.
Yeah, dogs don't get in trouble when they're in a crate. When they're supervised. They're either if they're supervised or crated, they really don't get in trouble. But I got a question for you. So I was about to jump in the shower today, and so I left Zeus just free in the house, which people might think is crazy to leave a 1-year-old Malinois just free in the house. I left him in the house, and then I put Flicka in my bedroom. So she's not in a crate, but she's in the bedroom, which is by the shower. All of a sudden, I heard like almost like a dog fight, but they were separated. So what do you guys think happened?
Was the door closed?
Yeah, the door's closed.
Doors closed, separated. It sounded like almost a dog fight.
Yeah.
Both of them.
Sorry, go ahead.
Was it both of them making the noises?
Timon already got it. Yeah. So what happened was, in my guess, is Flicka was laying by the door, inside my bedroom by the door with her face down there, and Zeus put his nose down by the door and sniffed. And as soon as he stuck his nose down there was instant barrier aggression. And I went out like, oh, what the fuck was that? And it was, that's exactly what happened. And why did I put them in crates? Because I feel like it's a short amount of time. And every single time I open the door, Zeus is just right there waiting for me. And Flicka's laying on my bed when I
Colby,
walk.
you misread that. She asked why you didn't just put them in the same crate, and then they wouldn't have had any barrier to aggress
You're
on.
right. I could have put them in the same crate. Flicka's one of those dogs you just can't do that with.
Bro, like I
would say
hate the conversations I have with owners, but every so often I'll get a phone call, and it's a pet owner that's in distress. And they call me. They're like, my 2 dogs. They've been living together perfectly fine for the last 3 years. I go out to eat. I come home, and one of them is dead. They got in a fight. It's just a crime scene basically. And I hate saying, and it's hard to say that it's like, look, it could have been prevented if you did this, because I don't want. I mean, they're already in distress, but.
You want to be like, I told you so, and make
I don't want to do that. But the biggest thing is that's why crate training is so appropriate. If you work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and let's say your dog lives 10 years, that's 3 years worth of time that your dog is left alone to do whatever the fuck they want to do. That is a lot of time to let a dog be up to their own devices, to eat something that poisons them, to fight your other dog, something. There's always that opportunity that something could go wrong. Why not crate your dogs? It just makes no sense to me.
It depends on the dogs.
Yeah.
But even that line of thinking though, it takes one situation, because even a dog has its days. You know what I mean? Where you can have Flicka and Zeus are greatest of friends, and there's never been an issue. But it just takes one day, one situation, one toy Flicka likes more than anything else that no one ever noticed for something to happen.
But see,
you know what I mean?
so let's go back
more
about
than
that.
that.
Oh, go ahead.
More than that, though, is that I have found is most people don't actually appropriately understand their dogs, or accurately, not appropriately, don't accurately understand their dog's body language. I've got one client that they thought that, their dogs were playing, and I was like, no, your female's redirecting onto your male, and your male is just super chill and doesn't care. But there's gonna reach a day that he does care. And so, like, now that they're like, oh, I thought they were all just playing, and I'm like, no, that's 100% like low level frustration redirection onto him, and he just walks away and doesn't care. So many times people are like, oh, my dogs get along great, and then out of nowhere they're like, I don't know where this fight came from, and I'm just like, I saw it a mile away, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think that the problem with some of this is it's so general, right? Never leave your dogs unsupervised. That's a great thing, right? Never leave them unsupervised, never this. But then you're like, have people like my dog Duke, my Aussie, right? And then I had this other German Shepherd, Kada. I don't give a fuck if it was World War III. I don't care what. They are not going to get in a fight. Now, am I going to leave Flicka and Zeus loose? Hell no. Flicka's never going to be left loose. She's always going to be supervised or crated. That's just how it's going to be with her because, I can't do a lot of things that I've been able to do with lots of dogs with her just because. Multi-crates, right? I don't know what the record is for the most dogs I've ever put in a crate before, but I had a giant crate, and so if I didn't have a top around my truck, I would just put them all in the crate, open the crate, they'd all go in there, and then shut it, go to wherever we're going, let them out, have a great time. Obviously, can't do that with Flicka because somebody would step on her frickin' toe and should rip their face off. But it doesn't mean that. It just means that you have to, and most people probably don't do it, you really have to know your dogs really well to make these decisions. But, if your dogs have been loose in your house for 40 years and you've never had a problem, you probably know what you're doing.
Yeah. So there's always the one.
You either know what you're doing, or you've gotten the same kind of dog all the time. Because, Kevin's perfectly fine being left loose all the time. Cerberus, I wouldn't do it in a million years.
Yeah, right. And that makes sense, because I can never leave my dog alone with unsupervised with my other dogs. Like you're talking about Flicka. Like if Elias if I left him unsupervised with my other two, I'm going to come home to a situation. But even then, and I understand what you're saying. I'm not trying to argue with you. Like you know what you're doing, and your dogs are great. I just feel like a dog can always have a bad day. Like there could be a day where this one particular dog is just having a bad day for whatever it is. Or he was running outside for his pad, no one noticed, and something happened. And for me, it's more like, I think we talked about it before, a comfortability thing, where I rather err to on caution, meaning I'm just gonna kennel my dogs versus possibly something happening. That's just me though.
So and bullies, I'm going to piggyback on that. So when you're talking about bad day, like an example I like to look at a lot of times is, what if your dog was doing whatever in the house, uncrated, and then while you're at work, and then broke a nail, right? Now the dog's in pain. When a dog's in pain, it's a very high possibility that the dog's going to be more reactive because of said pain. Now, your other dog comes up trying to play or whatever, or just even comes up to the dog, and then it causes the dog to react, possibly causing a potential horrid situation to happen. Like those are things. That is a what ifism, but it's a what ifism that I'm not going to risk.
Yeah. And that wasn't me trying to come at you, Kobe. I think your dogs.
Colby, you're an outlier anyway. You with the whole 1,000 hours with your dog that nobody else is ever gonna do as a dog owner. Your dog's extremely well compared to most dog owners. 100%.
Well, here's the thing. If you're gonna leave your dogs, here's a good rule. If you're gonna leave your dogs at home, and they're just gonna sleep, then you're fine. If they're gonna run around, they're gonna get into trouble. So the dogs that I leave at home, they're basically going to go to sleep, right? If I have, when I had Great Danes, we never crated them. They were good. They didn't do anything wrong. They were so easy. If you've got, golden retrievers or doodles or whatever, but, Josh, you've got a bully mix, right? So you're always going to have a different mindset. But let's say you got a couple doodles, right? 10 years from now, you get a couple doodles and you're like, these guys, I couldn't force them to fight. I could bang their heads. They would never fight each other. If they don't do anything wrong, then you'd be like, oh, yeah, I kind of see what people mean, right? But if you've always had bullies or something where you're always like, if I'd only owned Flicka, I'd be like, fuck no, I'm never going to leave her loose, because, it's just one of those things. So, yeah, it's so different from what dogs you've had. Like Nick says, my Great Dane doesn't get crated because they're just easy going. They're like, oh, cool, I get to sleep for 5 hours. See you later. Different.
Would you like to take my female?
Midnight, you've been up here for a while muted, and I know you wanted to come up because you had a story from earlier, and I'm going to allow you to have the floor if you want.
Yeah, no, I literally actually just met this client today, and I originally wasn't going to take his case, but a rescue that I work with reached out to me and was like, hey, will you meet with her? And I was like, all right, fine, whatever. I'm a pity man. So this lady is living out of her car with her 3 dogs. They're 3 pitties. One of them has some really bad aggression issues, both human and dog aggression. So I was like, honestly, it doesn't sound good. I'm going to be honest, like, there's more than likelihood I'm going to recommend euthanasia. Just because of the situation, and in my area, trying to rehome a dog like this is really like one of those minimum things. And when I got there, like she got the dog out, I like lent her like some leashes to put on, so I had like multiple leashes on this dog. Talked about some of these things, gave her the rundown, and I ended up being able to get the dog from her, and kept it on these leashes, kept some distance, and the dog like just entirely shut down the moment I was away from her. And the whole story with this dog is she had it when it was a puppy, but she had 2 additional that ended up being in a fight. One killed the other over the female being in heat. And then the dog ended up going up to another family member who was abusive. She got the dog back recently. The dog's just over a year now and is extremely reactive. And at first, I was really hesitant. I really didn't honestly want to have to say to her. I am honestly, and then she just found out today she's pregnant on top of it. So I'm like, I would really honestly, I push behavior for her, but she's like, I want to try. And I'm like, I'll let you work this dog just a little bit, but the moment you can't handle it, I'm calling it.
Yeah, so speaking of euthanasia, behavioral euthanasia, a lot of people won't hold my same opinion on it, but I don't have anything against it. But on top of that, on the other end, what you were talking about, the rehoming thing, if a dog is aggressive and the owner currently that's with the dog cannot handle that dog in any capacity, and they don't have the resources in order to, like, let's say, get a trainer and help with that, and then they still can't mitigate it, rehoming the dog I think is inappropriate. Because at that point you're passing a problem on to somebody that at this point doesn't even care about the dog yet, right? And in that case, like, euthanasia is completely appropriate, opposed to just rehoming the dog and hoping for the best. Especially, the owner now has to live with the idea that, what if that dog does maul somebody after I rehomed it? Right.
The dog has a bite as well. It was on one of her friends, and they were touching another one of the dogs, checking them out, and the dog was on the line and got just enough and ranked and bit it. And so I'm like, okay, well, I have to be cautious now. Like, I'm like, she can't even afford like a muzzle. Like, I'm getting paid through this rescue to come help her. And so I ended up like I did a couple things. I was kind of checking out some reactions and whatnot. And my biggest thing was like, I don't want to see this dog have a lot of redirection. I don't want to see this dog have a lot of like deference, especially with her now being pregnant and having these other dogs. And I've heard from the rescue that she apparently told them that this dog has jumped out of the window of her car to go after someone before. And like I hated to be frank with her. She definitely seemed upset about it. And I was like, at that point, you have to consider it's more than just quality of life. It's now you have to consider the safety of your other dogs, like the
other people,
and like this child you're going to potentially bring in, because her whole thing is like she knows that it's always going to be a possibility she's going to have to euthanize this dog, and if she does, she's going to get her cremated. Like, she'll keep her in the family. It'll be whatever. But wait, wants to try to work her. a little bit to try to make her rehomable. And I'm like, that's pushing it really hard, but I'll humor you for a little bit.
Yeah,
The
Colby,
thing
what were you
that
saying?
hits me on this whole thing is like what Nick just said too. And I said, me and Josh talked about this the other day. If you went to Mondio Ring Nationals, one of the biggest trials in the world, and you tried to rehome 10 of those dogs, they'd probably all be euthanized because no average person can take those dogs, even though they're the top trained dogs in the world. If the dog, you gotta have. If there's no home, there's no home. Euthanize, right? But some of these dogs, just like Flicker, right? If I had to rehome her, I would just get a hold of people who were Malinois people and say, hey, only Malinois people can take this dog. But I kind of feel like people, like, not you, but sometimes people jump to the, well, don't rehome a dog if it's got a bite history or whatever. I'm like, well, no, try to find somebody who is into that kind of dog and can handle it if there isn't anybody, you know, or if a professional, like if you're a Malinois trainer and you're the one saying the dog needs to be euthanized, that's different. But I kind of feel like people jump to the euthanize a little too quick sometimes without having it evaluated by the right people.
Oh yeah. That's why I preface it with resources. Like, does the person have the right resources to help with this situation? And that does include potential rehome with the right individual that can help the situation. But not everybody has those resources.
Yeah, like in my area, there's really not a lot of like spot where I would be able to know this is somebody who can handle this situation. Because in an ideal situation, especially after getting to evaluate the dog, like myself today, like the dog would thrive, honestly, with a new owner and a new situation and starting from the ground up. But like, there's no people like that in my area. And honestly, I can see if this dog were to be rehomed, I could see more likely than not the wrong hands getting on this dog.
Yep. Bullies, your hands raised. What's up?
So, no, I wanted to piggyback off what Kobe said. He's 100% right. You know what, and what Nick in the comments was saying. Nick, for the longest time, I would tell people it's irresponsible to rehome a dog with a bite history, because honestly, it is. But that's because I'm also used to people putting these dogs in a shelter, and in the shelter not tell you the whole history of this dog, even though like the shelter also has limited history of the dog. You know what I mean? Like, I can give a dog to whatever shelter's down the street and omit the fact that my dog has bitten people. You know what I mean? And that's where we're being irresponsible and the issues come out. If you can have a network, kind of how we have right here, where it's all of us communicating and we're all talking, and it's like, hey, Kobe, I know of a dog in your area that's spitting people, this and the other. Do you mind taking a look? Maybe you can do something with it. But it's so difficult and it's so out of the norm for someone and for many shelters / trainers and everything to have that type of resource at hand. Most of us deal with people who are like, I have this dog who is aggressive. I can't afford the training that I would need for this or the time to really learn how to manage it. So such a nuance when it comes to dogs like this.
So I always disagree with when somebody says that they don't have the time. It's kind of ridiculous to me, because everybody has the time. It's just, are they willing to make those changes in their lives to do what they need to do, and are they willing to listen to the trainer in order to do what they need to do? You know, that is a big issue when it does come to owners getting trainers for reactivity and other behavioral issues. Is a lot of not a lot of times, I would say 50-50. Owners don't want to put in the work. They think that dogs are like cars. Radiator broke, you take it to the shop, and now it's fixed. They don't want to put in the work.
I agree, but it's also kind of so. Not kind. I don't know how to say. I don't want to butcher your name, but this person brought something up. It's like, if you don't have the time, why do you have the dog? A lot of times, especially with rescues, you don't know what kind of dog you're getting, and that's the unfortunate thing. Like, you think you're getting this good dog that's going to be good and has a certain, I don't know, personality because you see it and you're like, hey, I want to check this dog out and it's friendly. It was walking by other dogs and wanted no issues. Then you bring it home and all of a sudden has all the issues that you're not prepared for. You know, it's difficult. Like rewinding really quick back to something we talked about earlier. Some people don't understand that, and you say this a lot, that these are little predators with knives in their mouths. People think of these dogs as these level things and don't do what they need to or research what they have to properly home a dog of a specific breed or dog period.
Oh, lack of education in dog ownership is the number one problem. Number one problem.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I'm happy that she's willing, like, and really wanting to work with this dog. Like, she wants to put in the effort, even, like, with, like, how bad her situation is. Like, she's living out of her car with these 3 dogs. She has somebody that watches them when she goes to work. And, like I admire her for putting through the effort and not just wanting to throw away all of them. But her biggest thing is, like, I tried to push so hard, too. And I'm like, it's more about your safety than I'm worried about. I know I can handle this dog. I know I can react quick enough for this dog. But you don't have that experience, and I don't want to see this dog turn on you, and you have to like see that go negatively, or this dog to go after someone else who's not going to be as understanding as your friend is, and they're going to put the dog down in front of you, and then that's a whole nother traumatic experience.
Yeah. Shelter dogs. Referring back to that, I always tell people, just assume, automatically, it doesn't matter what they act like in the shelter, just assume that the shelter dog is going to have some behavioral issue in some capacity. When dogs are in shelters, just like if you're moving to a new place or whatever, routines are different, environments are different, smells are different, everything's different, which is highly stressful for dogs. And a lot of dogs will shut down in those situations, shelter situations. So when a dog comes in and then they do a behavioral analysis of the dog, they can say, oh yeah, this dog's good around cats. No, not necessarily. The dog's just emotionally shut down and doesn't want to act like it normally would act. And then 3 months later, when it's in somebody's home, has all these issues that already had these issues that wasn't shown at the shelter. It's because the dog's now more comfortable and confident being itself and gotten used to the routines of things. So automatically assume if you get a shelter dog that there are going to be some behavioral issues and trauma somewhere.
I was told 7 days, 7 weeks, 7 months. So you bring the dog home, and then they're going to start changing after 7 days, and then they're going to change again in 7 weeks, and then they're going to change again in 7 months. And that's pretty much kind of where I've been seeing it with Zeus, right? At first he was like, I'm just so happy to have somebody who cares about me and does stuff with me. And then, a little more time goes by, and now he's like, I'm kind of getting a little bit cocky now. I'm kind of, and then I'm like, okay, well, I'm glad you're at the cocky stage, but now we're going to go back to being well-behaved. And then obviously we're not at the 7-month stage, so we'll see how that goes. But I did want to say one more thing on the euthanasia thing. Yeah, if you're taking the dog to the shelter because it's biting people, yeah, that to me is 100% unethical. And at that point, you probably should really think about euthanizing the dog. I'm talking more on the rehome route than, oh yeah, the dog bit 3 people, I'm going to take it to the shelter and let them deal with it. That's pretty bad. That's unethical.
Yeah, like Hayes is like the Klekai mix that I brought in. Was originally a board and train. The only problem Hayes has is Hayes didn't get the proper amount of exercise and mental stimulation, so he was full on all the time, which caused dog fights between the client and their mom's dog, right? And not an aggressive dog. And eventually, after the 2 weeks board and train, even in the middle of it, we had plenty of discussions with the owner and I about what does this dog actually need, and are you capable of giving the dog what it needs to mitigate this overstimulation constantly? Right. And the owner pretty immediately was like, can you help me rehome the dog? And after, working with this dog, and I've worked with this dog one-on-one at training and private lessons and stuff before with obedience and things, I like the dog a lot. And the dog gets along really well in this household and is thriving. And I was like, I have space for another dog. And it's one of the rare occasions that I will take a dog. From when a client wants to rehome. Very rare occasion. But I did, and Hayes is thriving. But that's not going to be the same for everybody. And, And I do have people all the time ask me about rehoming their dog if they can't handle, the reactivity and stuff. And I will try. I'll try to find somebody appropriate for it, but it's not always going to be the case. And a lot of people out there are some bleeding hearts out there that will take any dog, but they're not appropriate to take those dogs. And then you do have some people out there that are like, yeah, I'll take on this dog. But most of the time, most people don't want to take a dog that has already known high-level behavioral issues.
No, for sure. Like I would love to be able to give like find somebody to handle this dog, but the amount of positive only trainers that surround my area is ridiculous, and the only like balanced facilities that there are ridiculous. And there's one in particular that I will never ever recommend anyone to here, because I've seen dogs come out of there like horribly, like it's like only using
how do you I'm just questioning, Midnight, how do you know for a fact that positive reinforcement training wouldn't work with this dog?
The amount of like fear and aggression this dog shows, I just think it just wouldn't be, I guess, the right type to just go positive only. I absolutely want to build this dog up and like start getting her taking treats and like working up, and I definitely got her comfortable in the little bit of time I got to work with her. But I think going positive only, there's not a facility in my area that is positive only and will take dogs with aggression.
Gotcha. Yeah, because a lot of times when it's fear and anxiety based, a lot of times, depending on how much time you have to train the dog, a lot of times exposure, lots and lots of exposure on a level of almost flooding, along with a lot of classical conditioning with reinforcements, can change the dog's emotional state towards things and mellow them out enough to where you can start working on appropriate behaviors through positive reinforcement. I'm not saying that it works for every case. I mean, obviously, if you look at my profile, it obviously doesn't work with every case. But that's just something that like I'm just curious on, like, how do we know for a fact that wouldn't work with this dog?
I think it's more like particular, like I know how like bad some of the trainers in my area are. Because if I had like context in here of like different trainers and stuff in my area that I could be like, hey, look, this is what I'm dealing with. This is the situation. Like what's is there available? Because like I think with anybody who'd give the dog the right amount of time, but with the fear and willing to take the time and actually
Sorry,
work through it.
For a second, can you repeat the last like 10 seconds?
There's just
You said this is a situation, and that's where I didn't have live for a second.
It's just a situation where like there's not a lot of people in my area that are willing to just, like sit here and take the time with this dog, because I think like there's definitely a possibility like I could find a positive only recommendation or whatever, because like I also teach in that setting for work because I have to. But it's one of those things like this dog it needs patience, it needs time, and there's not a lot of people who look at a dog who is aggressive and are willing to put the time and patience in there, but also have the knowledge of how to handle these things when they happen.
Yeah. I mean, this is the point where I tell a lot that experience goes a very long way. You can have as much book knowledge in the world, but with no experience and no capability of putting that book knowledge into effect, the book knowledge is pointless, right? So experience, when it comes to this stuff, will go a very, very long way. And when it comes to high levels of aggression and reactivity, doesn't matter where it stems from, but with high levels of aggression from it, most people don't have the experience to be able to actually work through it.
Yeah, that's honestly the biggest problem with it.
Can we talk a little bit about what you've been doing with your dogs that fought?
My dogs? Or are you talking about clients' dogs? Like,
I think the one Ember and the other one, or I'm not
oh
sure.
yes, those two dogs. All right. I'm assuming you saw the video that showed the actual graphic photos of all the gore that happened when they fought.
I am so happy you were posting those things because you do, at least I believe I remember correctly, you do something similar that I do. At least like me and you talked about it. I don't put my dogs up when there's a scuffle. I have them out and I let them kind of like, I don't want them going back up into their kennels with the last thing on their mind being this dog just bit the shit out of me and vice versa. But I definitely want to hear your progress through this because it's just that's always such a nuanced thing. Like, multiple dog houses fighting sometimes occur, and most multiple dog homes will occur. So I think what you're putting up is a great segment. But
yeah. So Ember and Scout. One's a bully mutt and some type of bull breed mutt, and the other is a Siberian Husky. So what happened, it was 3 dog fights. So those pictures were different pictures from 3 different dog fights, the last one being the worst where you saw that bloodbath basically. And I mean, and you saw how severe those was. If anybody wants to check it out, it's the only video that has the little eyeball on it saying that it's restricted due to graphic content. You can look at it. It's going to make you sick to your stomach, but it's the reality of what can happen during dog fights. So what we've been doing is there's certain stipulations to what has caused these dog fights, and it's always over a resource, right? Always over a resource, and the resource is normally water. An outside water source like the AC is dripping water, and one of them wants it, and so on, and so it's always over that. So we've been managing, talking about like, they're created whenever the owner's not home, and I've been talking about like increasing their water intake. They're like, well, if they pee, it's like, well, then they do. It's better than them unaliving each other and killing each other because they want to get water outside, right? And so increasing that is one thing, so that way they have less want for said resources. And then what I'm doing personally, is I'm allowing them to be together. They're off muzzle, on leashes. And what we are doing when they're together is wins. Nothing but wins. I want their time spent together to be nothing but positive associations with one another. So we can start superseding the past aggressions that they've had with each other and the associations they currently have. So going on walks together, hanging out. They both love attention, so hanging out with one of them on each side of me, sitting on the couch and just hanging out, letting them sniff each other, letting them look at each other, and then not allowing them to go past a certain level of like staring and things like that. It's just a whole lot of classical conditioning that I'm working through with these dogs right now to mitigate their emotions towards one another. From there, we've also I've been working with the owner a lot. The owner's on a crate rotate type situation right now because they're traumatized themselves based on them having to break these fights up. And I mean, you saw the leg of the owner in the video and all that blood on it from the dogs, right? Like that's horrifying. That's a horrifying and traumatic experience for a human. And so she still doesn't trust it, and so we are working through that as well on a psychological level with them to be more willing to work with these dogs, but they're really leaving it up to me. So we have a lot of times where I'm doing multiple weeks at a time, multiple hours a day. Like I'll come in there 3 times a day for an hour each time just to work through these things with the owner. But we also still have to remember that because of this being 3 times within like a 6-month time frame of vicious fights, that there is a very good chance that it could happen again. So dampen the behaviors, mitigate in management. Management is going to be the biggest one, is managing the behaviors so that way it does not happen again. And are they going to be able to be out and hang out with each other? Absolutely. But they cannot have a single resource available to them when they're out and about with each other, period. Right? So we have to do a lot of management protocol to keep the dogs safe. So, and you might have to log and come back in. And I'll invite you back up. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of management and safety protocols that are going to be in place in order for them to be able to live together. Or the other option is rehoming one of the dogs, so that into a no dog household, so that way they can just thrive, and that would be completely fine as well.
Let me ask you something. So obviously, so that's interesting, and I think you are going about it the right way. But now, just because I'm curious now, do you know how the introduction process with them occurred? How they introduced them?
Like how I reintroduced them?
No, the initial phases of being introduced the first time with the owners.
Oh,
if you don't know, then it's cool.
How they were introduced with the owners initially?
Yeah, because
so initially, like I got plenty of pictures and videos of the dogs they were completely fine with each other from the get-go. They were hanging out, laying next to each other, laying with their heads on each other, just perfectly content with each other until the water resource thing happened, and then fight. And then after that, it would be like 2 months of them being completely okay with each other in their same space, and then it would happen again. And then a couple months later, they're fine, and then it would happen again, right? And so because of that, it's a consistent pattern of why they're fighting, right? And that's why the biggest aspect of it is they are fine with each other, absolutely fine with each other, as long as they don't have high-level resources that they want at the same time.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So, Elias. So resource guarding is it's interesting because there's so many levels to resource guarding. Does a dog resource guard when it has possession? Does the dog resource guard even if you are nowhere near the water, is it going after you? So one day when I had my previous dog before she passed, Elias was drinking water and Nala had walked by him, gave him a wide berth that didn't get into his face, didn't come into his intimacy, personal bubble, nothing. Turned. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Turned and just went for it, grabbed her. Now, reacted quickly, grabbed him, picked him up, gave him a little slam. I know, I'm horrible, but in that moment, he grabbed her and everything, so I did what I could at that moment.
At the moment, you do what you have to do to keep the dogs safe, and that means slamming them away from each other to keep them safe, then that's what you had to do. There's no amount of force that I would say is wrong on, obviously, I'm not saying, like pew your dog in the head, that type of force, right? There's no amount of force you could physically do during a dog fight that's wrong if it saves the two dogs' lives and stops it from happening.
100%. I just said that more because I don't know who's in here. And whenever we make these comments, there's always going to be someone who's going to have an issue with it. Mm-hmm. But my point being, after that happened, he went back over to his kennel. We went on a low rotation. And what I started doing, obviously, I'm not saying this is for every dog or to try with these dogs. Just because we're on this topic, because it's interesting. I started giving her water and food first. And then I would feed him second from the same bowl. Whatever she ate from, he ate from. And it got to the point where after, I'm not sure if it was from the correction of me picking him up and all that, or doing that, but it got to the point they were drinking water from the same bowl. Eating around each other. Sometimes it's a little bit of force. Know that I'm not happy with what you did. Second is showing you're still going to get food. And then supervision, and sometimes the dogs start to pick up it's okay. It's curious to what you're doing is amazing, 100% correct, I believe. But I also want to know what the household looks like when you're not there. What kind of roles are the parent or the owners taking in that home where these dogs doing all this? Because a lot of times too, it's just you have to have resource guardians because they don't feel like
down.
Things are fair, I guess you can say. It's limited, so what are we doing here? So there's a lot of questions that's just curious to me. I'm always interested when it comes to fights within the household because it's such a big thing to overcome.
Sorry, my effects messed up for a second. I am here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Cool. Cool. So I'm the worst host in the world, and I missed a chunk of that end there.
I was just saying, it's just interesting because I always wonder how you are doing all these things, but what's the house look like? What role, as in leadership, are the owners taking in this? You know, like what are they doing?
So
to-
this is actually really important. So this is one situation where the owner is actually listening to everything I say. The owner is doing the homework. The owner is very in tune with this because they want it to get better, and they know whatever they were doing wasn't working, right? So as far as leadership goes, the owner absolutely does have boundaries. They have 8 dogs, right? So those are just the 2 that's gotten in the fights, right? They have a Dutch Shepherd who we've already worked with this Dutch Shepherd with nipping behaviors with guests that come over, and now that's gone. But these are the last 2 dogs that have reactivity issues, and these are the more severe ones. They've never gotten in fights with the other dogs in the household. Is only between them 2. And the other dogs, if the fight happens while they're all out, they steer clear, which is great. That's a positive. But yeah, she's very in tune with this stuff. She does have clear boundaries as well set. So she's not trying, straight up force free. She, if there's unacceptable behavior in any capacity, she does set the boundaries and make sure that it's clear. She does very good with that. It's just this situation was something where the first time it happened, she didn't expect it to happen based on their previous behavior with each other. And then the second time it happened, it was one of those, owner things where it's like, oh, it's been 2 months. It must have been a one-off thing. And then it happened again. And then the third time it happened, it was again, owners, bleeding hearts. We sometimes, even if we have best intentions, want to ignore certain things because it's like, oh no, it can't happen again. I'll do all this, and then it happens again, and that's when she's like I can't anymore. I need a professional to help me with this.
Yeah, I don't know how this is going to come off. So, and it's weird, but sometimes you and I think, have talked about this. There has to be a reasonable amount of respect the dogs should have for the owner, as well as fear. Like we talked about growing up and testing the boundaries of our fathers, and like, hey, you set that toe out of line, dad is gonna have your ass. So sometimes it's like we do everything that's right, but the dogs still don't see you in that role, and you have to make it known in some ways. And it's a lot of times, like when you're in the house, people don't want to have the dogs on the leash because they have no boundaries, this and the other. But when there's a dog fight, what are you going to do? And
I don't think that there's a level of fear dogs should have towards owners. The respect thing comes from the respect that you control the resources, right? You control all the resources. That's where respect comes from in a dog's eyes, right? You control the resources. Now, when it comes to fear, they shouldn't fear the owner. They should be afraid of certain behaviors they do.
Yeah.
And that's the big line that I throw out there. Why do I want my dog to be afraid of me? Rather than being afraid to lunge at another dog, right? I don't care if they're afraid of me or not. They're afraid that when they lunge at another dog, it's not going to fucking feel good.
Yes. Yes. I think I said it the wrong way then, but yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And I'm completely fine. That's a very, very, appropriate fear to have in life. Any type of animal should have some fear, period. It's very healthy fears, right? Appropriate fears to have. No different than a human, not to humanize dogs, but a human. I'm not going to stick my hand on a hot pan that's in a freaking oven because I'm afraid of the outcome. It's going to hurt. I'm not going to walk off the ledge of a cliff because I know the outcome. It's not going to be fun. Those are healthy fears, right? Just like dogs, it's completely appropriate that they have some stress. Completely appropriate. They just need to learn to be okay with not being okay with things sometimes.
Yes, agreed. And it's funny, like, and that this is in some communities. It's like I know people who are very force free and positive only, which there's nothing wrong with that. The only times I have issues with it is when it becomes I don't let my dog fail. I never set them up for failure. I don't take them somewhere where there's a likelihood of failure. Then you have a bubble dog. You know what I mean? Because the moment
So
you can't control it and you take them somewhere and there's a little bit of stress, your dog is acting a fool. I mean,
good boy. So when it comes to that, absolutely agreed, right? The whole I will never set my dog up for failure is failing your dog. All right. And what I mean by that is I'm not intentionally trying to get my dog to jump the fence so that way I can correct that behavior. No, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is if I need to take my dog, somewhere, I'm not going to play the avoidance so that way the dog never stresses. Right? We're going to get through that situation so the dog understands that level of stress is completely okay and they can work through it. That's completely fine to do. And having the idea of playing avoidance with everything in life is setting the wrong expectations to a dog, to where they will, like you said, a bubble dog will never know how to cope with stressors.
and to be honest, I do set my dogs up for failure at times. When I'm teaching them, hey, this is what I want, this is what I want, this is what I want, I'm gonna give you the opportunity to make a mistake. Either you can choose to do what I've been showing you to do, or you're gonna do something wrong, and then I'm gonna have to
I don't
act
even
like-
consider that setting up for failure, bud. I consider that allowing the dog to make a decision, and then there's a consequence, whether a good or bad consequence for said decision. That's associative learning. That's operant conditioning. Dogs making decisions based off of experiences, right? So that's not even setting a dog up for failure. Now, setting a dog up for failure would be like an example would be like, let's say you're using an e-collar to set boundaries, right? Throwing their ball over that boundary line to have them run through it so that way you can correct them to recall. That's setting them up for failure. Now, what you can do instead is allow them to walk around, and when they get close to that boundary, you recall. If they don't want to listen, then you use the stimulation so that way they do listen. That's not setting up for failure. That's them learning through association. They're learning based on their decisions.
Maybe, yeah. Then maybe I'm looking at it differently because, I guess in my mind, it's I know you're gonna break this. I know you're not gonna do what I expect you to because you're just this way. So I'm gonna give you the correction because I do want my dogs in a sense to understand there's consequences.
Yeah. So
negative.
So yeah, no, our human mind, we already know. Like, I already know you're not even going to listen to this. You're going to blow me off, and I already know. I expect that I'm going to correct you, right?
Yeah.
So that's what you're saying, setting up for failure.
Yeah.
I don't believe that is setting up for failure, because the thing is, if you already know the dog's going to blow through something or not listening, and you're going to have to make a correction, then that means that you were going to have to do it eventually anyway. So now you're in a controlled environment, setting the expectations appropriately, so that way you're not reactively making corrections when it does happen in the real world.
Okay, fair enough. I guess at this point we're just arguing semantics, but yeah, in that sense, that's what I do. Like, I'm gonna, in the most controlled environment possible, I'm gonna set my dog up because I know what he's gonna do, so I can correct said behavior. You know what I mean? Because it can be potentially dangerous, especially with a dog like I have, which one day, bro, I'm going to hit you up and we're going to do a little virtual session so you can see this dude. You're going to fall in love with him, and then you're going to be like, oh, he's an asshole.
Yeah.
But,
so, Midnight. Yeah. What Midnight's saying, the difference is setting up for failure is getting a dog to do bad things just to correct. Here's a really good example, because I've seen, this is actually the main example of setting a dog up for failure. Getting a dog to jump up on you just so that way you can correct the dog for jumping up.
Oh, yeah.
I see that time and time and time again, and that's not the appropriate way to do it. You don't try to coax the dog to jump up on you just to correct it.
Yeah,
because now that's going to confuse the dog. The dog's not going to understand, why would you want me to jump up on you and then punish me after? I don't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair. I think that's okay. That's a fair example, because you're literally telling him to do something. When he complies, you're like, I got you, bitch. That's not cool.
Yep. Yeah, but I know what you're talking about as well on the force free side of the community. Not there's a lot of them. Not every force free trainer is this way, but they will sit there and say, "I will never set my dog up for failure." And what they do mean by that is that they're never going to put the dog in a situation where they might need a correction. And I mean, it can work. I mean, it can. Not always, but it can. But to me, it's just not setting the dog up for success if they've never been able to experience something. Because what happens when the dog has to experience that and they don't know what to do?
Yeah. Go. I'm not sure if Kobe's still on, but he talked about when we talked about the 1,000 hours of training. He always says it too. You can have a dog that's great and an hour a day for 3 years of substantial training, of good hard training, and then all of a sudden, he still says, he puts an e-collar on his dog, takes it somewhere because there's going to be a situation that she's going to have to respond a certain way, and you got to be there to guide them. And it's a dog, like a dog responds a certain manner, and if you're just going to try and lure them with this, with high value rewards, and I hope you have a drumstick in your pocket at all times,
So the way I look at it is, if your dog has ever done a behavior before, it is likely that they will repeat that behavior at some point in the future. Period. Doesn't matter how high level trained you have the dog. If the dog has ever done a behavior, they can repeat the behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we have protocols in place. Yeah, and now as far as setting them up for success, I get where the whole I don't want to put them in a situation where they'll ever fail. What it should be is, you should definitely put them in stressful environments. Environmental exposure is very important. You should allow them to mitigate through different things and learn different things. And even on a positive reinforcement approach, you can easily do that. The biggest thing is no matter what situation they're in, it needs to be a positive experience, right? And that's why I tell people all the time, when you're teaching socialization, it does not have to involve dogs meeting other dogs or people meeting dogs. It's just experiencing life in the vicinity, because you want it to be a win every time. And gambling on a random stranger's dog or a random stranger doing everything perfectly is a gamble you shouldn't be taking, because it's likely that is not going to be a win. And so having a positive experience for everything is what's going to make your dog behaviorally balanced. And so that does mean going into stressful environments. That does mean being in situations where the dog could fail. So that way you can end it on a positive note, make it a good experience. And then sometimes it might not be the most pleasant experience for a dog. Like an aversive due to a behavior, like let's say running off to chase a squirrel or whatever, right? And you might have to use that stim on the e-collar to recall because they're blowing off anything else. Yeah, that's not a situation that they're it's a positive experience for the dog, but that is a experience that is necessary.
So I don't know. You want to elaborate on this a little bit? I can't pronounce the name Nakana. They said the e-collar, how's it a communication tool? I'm still having an issue with this. I don't know. You want to touch on that or?
All right. So I hate sugarcoating things. Anybody that's been in my lives enough times will hear me cut somebody off to say, let's cut the shit. E-collars are meant to not feel good. They hurt sometimes. They're aversive. They are. That's the point of them, right? And good. That's what I wanted to communicate with my dog. When it comes to communicating, right? Whenever I say this is used to communicate with a dog, all I'm saying is it is there to allow the dog to understand what I want, right? That's all I mean by it. So if the dog is running and let's say my dog tries to jump the fence, get shocked with an e-collar, I am communicating to the dog that behavior that they just did makes something not feel good at all. So they're going to be avoiding that behavior, which is great because it's a dangerous behavior. right? I don't want you doing it. When a lot of people talk about communicating with their dog with e-collars, and this is where I have a big opinion on, is, and I've talked to bullies about this a few times. I'm not talking about negative reinforcement. We're just strictly talking about positive punishment. People will say if you have an e-collar, you need to have a working level, and then if the dog blows that off, that's when you crank it up. And I'm like, no, there should never be a working level for positive punishment. It should be a appropriate stimulation that's high enough level to make the dog not want to do that shit, and no blowing through it, period, right? The people that say, oh, it's so I can tap my dog on the shoulder. I mean, I guess you can use a very low level stimulation to basically say, hey, I'm over here, look at me, engage me. But my thought process on that is, if you can use a very low stimulation that the dog could easily blow through just to communicate with them, you could easily do the same thing with rewards, with treats.
So can I hop on? Can I piggyback off of you real quick?
Yeah.
All right. So no, 100%. When we talk about working levels, because I use my e-collar for various things, when we talk about low working level, that's the lowest level the dog can perceive in order to continue to work with you. Exactly what K9 was saying, what Inform was talking about, there should be a point when your dog is, because e-collar, except for certain situations that we've talked about in the past, but we'll leave that for now. Before you get to the e-collar level, your dog needs to understand pressure. You start off with, it could be, depending if you're doing sports or whatever, but with me and K9 and I have talked about this before, and I have omitted this, so I made some changes. So we go from flat collar to slip to prong, and then finally to e-collar. As we move on up through these different levels of pressure, the dog should be understanding what that means. He should also have a good basis of his obedience, sit down, come, whatever it may be, what he's supposed to be doing, his basic manners before we get to an e-collar. Because once we get to that e-collar, and there's ways to work it before we go full off leash, at that point, when you're walking around with your dog on an e-collar, you're not walking around with it on its working level. It's at an adversus level. You Larry Cron talks about, it should be depending on what the working level is, you should have your dog at a 30 or a 40 on his e-collar. That way, if he is doing something dumb, running, not obeying you, and he looks like he's going after, i.e. a kid, a dog, running into the street, and your dog is conditioned to what the e-collar is and what it means. So when you stim him, he then comes back to you because it's at a versus level, it's at a punishment level. So before we get through all these things...
So, real quick, bullies, there's two things there that I see differently.
Okay.
I go with slip leash first, and then I digress to a flat collar, because I can communicate a lot more effectively with a slip lead, and then once the dog understands leash pressure, then I can go to a flat collar. That's the big difference that I do there. But what you're doing, if it works, is fine, perfect.
Yeah. And
the other thing is that when it comes to utilizing, let's say, the e-collar, you were talking about like utilizing the 30 or 40 on an e-collar, and then you start talking about conditioning. I don't think there is, unless obviously there's a difference between negative reinforcement. I'm talking solely on positive punishment.
100%.
No conditioning is necessary, because the thing is when they're wearing the collar regularly, they won't become collar wise because you're not using it reactively, putting on there after they've done something wrong, right? Mm-hmm. So they're wearing it regularly, and then whenever you're using an e-collar, it's specifically on the punishment side of things because they're doing a dangerous behavior. Blowing you off to run after something is a dangerous behavior. Shock them, right? Period. Because they're doing a dangerous behavior, I want them to know immediately that doesn't feel good.
Yeah,
I'm talking fucking sucked.
Yeah, I'm talking about more on the side of we're conditioning the dog to use this, and for us to build on an e-collar versus only using it for punishment. I'm talking about the spectrum of the e-collar.
So here's a fun study that was done. It was done on mice. What they were doing is they wanted to see, they were using electricity. Yes. And they were trying to see the stimulation levels that are needed of this electric shock in order to stop the mice from blowing through a boundary to get their reward, whether it's cheese or whatever they want, peanut butter or something, right? And what they found was that when they start with a low level stimulated shock, right, low level stim, and then the mice would blow through it, and then they would increase it, the mice would blow through it and increase it. Eventually they would find a level where the mice were like, nope, I'm not blowing through that, right? Now, what they found was in the different tests, they found that the pool of mice that started with a low level stim and gradually worked to a level that they would not blow through, it was a much higher level stimulation to get to stop them from blowing through than the other mice that were initially started with a medium high level that immediately spoke to them saying that didn't feel good.
Yes, yeah, I'm familiar with what you're talking about. So basically, what was going on is when they lowered the stim and they gradually started to raise it, the rats began to realize their own pain threshold. So they can be like, I can push through this, I can push through this, until they eventually reach to a level that they could not push through. And so when we talk about punishment and working level, those are two different things. I know people who talk about cranking it on the e-collar to get to it, because on, like, for example, the e-collar technologies, when you just do like a small little spin, it just jumped up 30, 40 levels. So when we talk about punishment and working levels, and your dog is about to do something stupid, we're not slowly increasing the stim. You're jumping high. So what you talk about, an immediate level that's going to give you that, oop, never mind, I don't want to do that.
And that's why I say there's no conditioning needed, because I want to communicate with my dog immediately, because if the dog's going to do something dangerous, I do not have the time to start cranking that e-collar up to a level that even if I just crank it up, blast it, between the time that the dog is doing said dangerous behavior and by the time that they blow off my stimulation and then me crank it up, they've already reinforced that behavior, right? And now we're just recalling them.
And it's also dumb because, sorry, not trying to interrupt you, but you're right. It's also dumb because, so for example, if your dog has because every dog is different, right? So if your dog's working level is, say, a 10 or 15, right? We're just using numbers, 10 or 15. When it is in a high aroused state, it saw a squirrel, whatever it may be, and you're trying to slowly go up, you might find that your dog isn't paying attention to you until you get into your 40s or 50s. By that point, by the time you got there, your dog is already getting into the trouble that you're trying to avoid. That's why when you do this, like, and this is me, this is what I do with my dog, because I also know my dog. So do with this what you will. I have my e-collar set up to a 30. If we're outside, we're playing with the ball, I'm tossing it, he's going for it, grabbing it, coming back, whatever, and he just looks somewhere. I'm like, Elias, come. Because I know there's like a dog coming or whatever it may be. Elias, come. And he does not come, and he's still fixating. He's getting zapped on that 30. If that 30 does not work, that boost is going to...
I just don't waste the time. The only time that my dog had ever...
You cut out, brother.
What brands are you guys using, out of curiosity?
First choice.
Always does that.
Okay, doesn't he? Back?
I am back. So the only time my dogs have ever felt the low level stim for punishment was when I was trying to figure out what level was effectively going to stop them no matter what.
Gotcha.
Right? And then after I found that level, I'm like, that's where your collar's going to stay.
That works. And that works fine. Perfectly fine. I'm not saying that's wrong, because you know me and you've talked about this. I'm talking about it from a different standpoint.
Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with having different ways to do things. Again, e-collars can be used in a multitude different ways, right? This is just how I use them. I'm not saying that you're wrong for using them how you do, because if you're effectively communicating, then absolutely use it how you're using it, because if the dog understands what you're trying to get them to understand, then 100% you're doing it right.
Now, really quick question, just to clarify. When you say you don't condition your dog, do you teach it what turns it on and off the stim, or you just straight raw dogging it? It's like, boom, hit.
Okay, so So with negative reinforcement, this is where we're getting onto the other side of things. So if I'm going to use an e-collar stim for negative reinforcement, it's going to be a hell of a lot lower, right? It's just going to be something that feels uncomfortable, not something that is painful and hurts, right? And with that said, the dog, I only use negative reinforcement after we use positive reinforcement to create a new behavior, like a sit command or a stay or something like that, right?
Yes,
And then
correct.
or a place. And then what I would utilize negative reinforcement for is to solidify that command, right? So if I have a dog in a sit and the dog wants to keep breaking the sit, at that point when they break the sit, I can hold down the lower level stim that feels uncomfortable, and the way the dog turns it off is by getting back in a sit. And now it's off. Now that just negatively, I removed the stimulation to increase the likelihood of the behavior occurring. And so when I say sit, they already know the sit command. They get rewarded if they do it. If they don't do it, then I hold the stim until they do it, and then it gets released. And then that will effectively communicate with them that, hey, in order for me to turn this off, I just have to do what they just told me to do that I already know that I should be doing.
Yes. So, yes, perfect. I do it with come initially on the long line and everything, but yes, the
You
reason
can do it with leash pressure too. It doesn't just have to be e-collar. Leash pressure you can do it with that. I try not to do like some people will do like first sit, for instance, since we were talking about that. They'll use pressure of their hand on their rear and keep pushing down pressure until the dog sits and the pressure is removed. The only reason why I don't like doing that is because that can potentially cause hip issues, and I don't want to do that to the dog. So what I would rather use leash pressure, upwards leash pressure, just to make it uncomfortable until they figure out, to release this leash pressure, all I need to do is do the command that they've taught me, or I can use the e-collar to hold the stem down.
So I like, me personally, this is me, I like using well, first I find the working level.
Well, resource withholding too. Don't forget that there is resource withholding, like withholding the treats, the rewards, and then the only way they can get it is figuring out what they need to do. I use resource withholding very heavily when it comes to place commands.
So when it comes to conditioning the e-collar, for me, this is my 2 cents. You know, everybody does it a different way. If it works for you, it works for you. This is how I do it. So when I find the working level, because we got to remember with e-collars, even though when it comes to certain placement, like if I put it on the right side, under the neck, on top of the neck, the dog, what is happening is it's pressure. It is a form of pressure, even on the low level. So the dog is trying to get away from that pressure from one way or another. So what I do is I have a long line. Once I find the working level, and I know that working level, he can perceive it, I let the dog sniff. I then stim, say come, add a little bit of pressure. The moment the dog looks at me, starts making paces to me, pressure comes off. Negative reinforcement. I want the dog to start learning what turns it on and off. Now, obviously, there's a lot more nuances, not trying to get into a whole e-collar class, but once the dog understands what turns it on, what turns it off, for me, when it comes to punishment, it makes a lot more sense to the dog. So if I say no, and I stim him hard because of whatever's going on, he knows to come back to me, because there have been instances.
Yeah, and now that no becomes a marker, a punisher marker.
Yeah, but not just that.
Yeah.
But also because I've seen people do it and it works successfully, but some dogs, when you stim them, it doesn't know where the stim is coming from. And if your timing is off, it's like I'm running to cat. And once I get to cat or about to get to cat, stim comes on. He's like, oh, get away from the cat. So it comes back to the other direction. But some dogs have kept going to, not to necessarily to the cat, but pass it and keep running because it doesn't know where to go to turn off the stick.
So timing is everything. So here's how that communication changes, right, when it comes to association. The dog starts running towards the cat and you stim the dog associates, running towards that animal is not good. Now the dog gets to the cat, and that's when you stim. Now the dog can make the association that, that animal right there stung me, and that could make it worse.
Mm-hmm. It could make it worse. Have you seen Kobe's video?
I need to look at it. I haven't seen it yet.
So his timing is on point. So when you see it, Zeus is going, and right before he makes contact with the cat, freaking Kobe lets him have it. Dog does a straight U-turn, comes right back to his side, and go take the win. You know, so I 100% agree that can definitely happen, but it can also be one of those situations like that just did this to me, so I need to get away from it.
Yeah.
But it could also increase the same because like if you have two dogs playing and they're getting roughed up and your timing is right, you can stim your dog and be like, get it away from that dog.
Yeah.
And if it's not the right amount of stim and it's lower, because I were talking about like the different levels, which is like you said, they can definitely be dangerous in certain situations. Now it could be just high enough for him to ignore, but just high enough for him to be like, this dog just hurt me because arousal states are rising.
Oh, I mean, yeah. If you have too low of a stim and you're stimming a dog while they're in an arousal state, that can increase drive.
Yep. And it's the e-collar is such a nuanced thing that when I teach it or when someone asks me about it, your dog needs to show me that it has a good comprehension of a lot of things beforehand. Now, are there moments where it's like my dog is in the backyard, it's always doing something, and you want to use it for that, like how you did it with your chickens? That's perfectly fine. Like you don't have to do too many conditioning to it and all this because that's completely fine. Hey, you go after the chicken's gonna hit you back, and you're not gonna like it. The dog's gonna be like, "Oh, that chicken's no joke," and he's gonna learn. You know, it just comes into the navigating the world is when conditioning of the e-collar becomes important, if that makes sense.
I suppose. I'm still gonna disagree on certain things, but
It's all right,
we can keep repeating and going in circles, but it's all good. So when you were talking about like timing, right? I love showing this. I show videos of this shit all the time, right? Because I'm not a perfect trainer either. There's plenty of times in videos where a dog does something, and I will even verbally say, "Wow, I just missed that punisher marker. Let's reset." Like because if I miss a punishment or a reward, I don't then give the reward or punishment after that. It's like, well, I missed it. I can't do anything about it now.
100% right. And I caught the shade you threw at me, bro. I'm not a perfect trainer either.
Isn't it a red flag if you're claiming you are the best trainer in the world?
It definitely is a red flag. You claim to be the best trainer.
Yeah. So Mizzy and Service, how are y'all doing?
Good.
Great.
I'm waiting for the transportation people to come pick me and my service dog up from an appointment.
Gotcha.
It's gonna be an hour, so I'm like, I might as well hang out on TikTok.
Yeah. So Service, what brought you to the panel?
Oh, I've been in here before. I just changed my picture and username because some people were picking on me and wouldn't leave me alone.
Gotcha. You don't have to disclose your previous ones. You can DM it to me if you want so I can remember. I think I got the voice down, though. I think I know you. Now, Mizzy, what brought you to the panel?
I got myself a rabid 7-week-old German Shepherd puppy.
Oh, fun. Fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So what do you mean by rabid?
Wouldn't you like to know?
That's why I asked.
Yeah, he's a mess. I mean, he's 7 weeks. I got him off, I mean, I can tell you about the dog if you want to know about the dog.
Yeah, let's go into it. I got time.
So, I live in Oklahoma. I live in Western Oklahoma. So it's a smaller town. So, everybody knows everybody. And I had gone to the gas station, and about a month ago, my girlfriend got a puppy, a poodle puppy. So I kind of started looking around, but then I kind of gave up because $2,000 for a dog is kind of out there a little bit, out of my budget right now. So I go to the gas station, and this old lady that I used to work with, she had a friend with her, and they had these puppies, and my fiance walks up and says, "Look at this dog." I said, "Okay, I'll take a look at it. I don't want it to be a mutt, you know what I'm saying? Just a mix of everything." So I look at the dog, and they say, "Hey, yeah, he's a purebred German Shepherd." And I'm like, And how much are you on for him? They said, "Well, we're not wanting nothing for him. We have a litter of 10. We just got to get rid of them. Can't afford to feed all of them, and just don't have the time. And I said, well, okay, can I hold him? So I held the dog, and immediately holding this dog, I fell in love with him. But he, I don't know if I'm allowed to say it on TikTok. He smelled like amphetamine, the M.
Yeah.
The M. So I brought him home. I had cleaned him. He smelt like it worse. So I had took him down the street to my buddy, who's a police officer. He said, "Yeah, that's what that smells like." So I come home and I kind of take my clippers and I shave off the layer, nothing thick, just kind of literally the top pieces of his fur, because with the Fayal, I don't know if I want to say on TikTok, that problem going around. They were obviously on a substance, so just for safety of him as well as me, cleaned him up. He had a flea infestation, so I gave him some Capstar as well as got his vaccinations, and he's rabid. So he no matter who he meets, if he meets you, he's gonna bite you, right? And then not an aggressive bite, but I mean absolutely gnaw your hand off. It's something that I don't know if it's normal puppy behavior. This is my first time owning a puppy.
Well, if it's a German Shepherd, they are kind of mouthy. So how old you say it was?
They told me 6 weeks, so I went and got him his shots, but because he wasn't vaccinated, so I went and got parvo, all that, the good stuff. I did it myself. I usually do it myself. He is mouthy, but he's so young that he just doesn't understand what hurts and what doesn't, and his bite force. Like right now, he's biting.
Every time he bites you and it's too hard, make like a yelping noise or go, ow. That's what I had to do with my younger dog.
So
Okay, so as far as the yelping sound goes, don't do that. Because that's the same thing as squeaker toys and stuff. The dog is most likely going to associate it with, oh, that was fun. Let me do it harder. Right? You don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But rough play is very important for puppies. And the reason why is because it teaches the dog to be able to raise his threshold and then turn the threshold off, and go back below it. It teaches the dog boundaries. When you're done, right? It also teaches the dog bite pressure. And puppies have little razors, man. It's not even knives at this point. It's little razors. They're sharp as hell, man. So mitigating that is extremely important. Cute pup, though.
My hand's all messed up. He does it there. I don't know if it's like normal behavior for his breed.
It's normal. It's normal for a puppy. Puppies explore the world with their mouths. They play with their mouths, and puppies have sharp teeth. Anybody that has ever had a puppy has had some battle wounds on their arms from puppies being mouthy. Period.
Yes, that's true. Now, and this is so this comes into a lot of things, and everybody's gonna have their own views on this. And you have a lot of great trainers on here. They're most likely that dog is going to grow up. Majority of my dogs who are nippy and all that when they're puppies, they stop. It's a puppy. You should definitely show him or her. I don't know if it's a boy or girl. What's
a boy?
Yeah, you definitely show him what's appropriate to bite, what's not. It all also depends on what you're trying to do with the dog. You know what I mean? Like, and obviously you probably just want to do a pet, but like in certain worlds.
Oh no, I'm wanting him to go work line.
Okay, if you're gonna do a working line, I wouldn't correct the biting. And you want to do something like that, and I don't know if he's gonna be capable of working because it is such a young puppy. You're not gonna really be able to tell until I guess it's like 6-8 months, because then you're gonna see if it has what it takes to do what you're trying to do. But if you're trying to go working line, or you're trying to do protection sports, you're trying to do stuff like that, you don't want to correct that bite. You don't want to do a lot of that stuff. You want to do like you kind of in the healthiest way possible. You want to let the dog just be a dog until it gets older. there was a person on here earlier, TJ. He would have been great to ask on this because it's for a really long time until the dog is like for a lot of people, especially in like the protection world, dog sport world. Like for the first 8 months to a year, the dog is just kind of being a dog.
Yeah, so my big thing is the reason why I don't like to talk a lot of bite work stuff on here without bite work trainers and stuff is because I don't want, for instance, with this situation, bullies. Oh yeah, I wouldn't correct the biting. But why not? Like, because what if they decide, oh, behaviorally now the dog's mature, doesn't act a certain way that would be beneficial for bite sports. Now we don't want it to do bite sports, but it's never learned an off. It's never learned boundaries with biting. So no, absolutely, I would definitely set those boundaries in place because you can still capitalize on it later, on their behavior.
So it's actually, so when we're talking about bite sports or we're talking about puppy nipping and stuff like that, that's an easy fix. When we're talking about bite work and increasing it, that's when things are different. But in this stage, the nipping, it grabbing onto you, like we have you know him, I think, Mikey, Dr. Good Dog. He has 2 mouths that he's raising for bite sports right now. They're nippy. That's what they're doing, and that's fine. But it depends. Again, goes into what are you doing? What's the house look like? There is such a lot into this that goes into when you're raising dogs for specifics that you are right. You got to be aware of what you're doing, how you want to raise it. So I think the best advice to give you in this situation is find a trainer that specializes in what you're trying to do so they can help you navigate that world. Because Informer is right. In my experience, nippy dogs, especially when they're probably that young, they're going to stop. But you can wholeheartedly teach it, stop biting me, bite this instead, whatever. But if you're, like I said, you're trying to go to a certain route, you can inadvertently make it not want to lose his bite. Yeah. So that's why the best thing for you right now is find a trainer in your area that specializes in bite sports, that specializes in certain thing that you're trying to do.
Guide you right through it.
And yes, exactly.
Yeah, so he with his his puppy pad and all that, he's getting better at it, but he likes to tend to go under my bed, which I blocked that off. I cleaned it up, blocked it off, stuff like that. But he still misses that pad when he goes, number 2. He tries to hit it, but just doesn't.
You crate train?
I don't crate train him. No, I just puppy pad him. And then I've tried to take him out every 2 hours or so.
Crate training would help that a lot.
Yeah, the right size crate will definitely help that out. I'm sorry to call it short, guys. I'm at 1% battery, and with the phone being on, unfortunately, TikTok makes my camera stay on even with a green screen background type crap. I hate it. My phone will unalive itself here shortly, so I am going to end the live. But I really enjoyed this conversation, and I'll definitely do a live tomorrow.
Hey, thanks for having us. Great conversation as always.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you guys. And I'll see y'all soon, I'm sure.